give as much as possible of, let's say, understanding or knowledge or sharing of experience in FDI, and we invited as many as possible. And I can see there are some places still empty, but I guess we are a good group. We will have a, let's say, capacity building workshop for investment promotion professionals, and it's divided by 3 sections. So each will be, let's say, 1 hour. Okay, maybe we are a bit behind schedule, but I guess there will be no problem. We will start with Andreas Dressler. Many of you, I guess, know him. He's a prominent investment expert. He has a very, let's say, broad background in the different areas, and I'm sure he will bring some, let's say, trends to show what's going on in the FDI recently. Then I will try to speak a bit about multi-stakeholder dialogue and what WIPA is trying to do recently, trying to strengthen the linkages with the top organizations and being like a catalyst among governments and IPAs, which are of course our members and the most important bodies. And then what I believe is the most important from today is the experience sharing. So we invited the colleagues from 3 IPAs to share experiences with you. And I would like, really, they are from Cefisit Côte d'Ivoire, they are from the Tatarstan, and they are from Italy. So it's kind of mix of different kind of agencies and I guess different kind of experiences. And I would like you not to be static and be interactive. It's not the purpose here that we stand here and we lecture and we behave as a professor. It's not the case. So we should be partners, we should be colleagues, so we should speak, we should exchange challenges, views. If you have any, let's say, you would like to oppose or you would like to suggest something, please do so. This gives the real, let's say, added value from any type of workshop. So let me not be too long, and I would simply give the stage to Andreas, and I hope you will all enjoy the workshop today. Thank you very much.
Good morning. Thank you, Bastian, for the introduction. Thank you for being here. This is the, I think, first official event at this year's AIM conference. So you are obviously the most motivated of all the conference attendees to be here so early in the morning on the first day, but we will certainly make it worth your while. This is actually a special day for me because I've been working in this field of foreign direct investment now for exactly 21 years. So I started my career 21 years ago to the day, April 1st, 1996. A lot of you were still in kindergarten at that time, with a company called KPMG in their site selection department. And time has flown. So they say time flies when you're having fun. And it has been fun. And one of the reasons it's been so much fun is because of the nature of foreign direct investment. This is probably, I think, one of the most exciting fields that you can work in. It's constantly changing, it's dynamic. There are so many outside influences, economic influences, political influences at the global level, at the national level, at the local level that influence what we do. And that's really made this, so far, a great ride. And that's what I'd like to start presenting about today. And I apologize, I'm going to have to move back and forth between you and the screen. If we ever get a screen. Yes, thank you. So let's just fill in the gaps. So the things I'd like to cover today are a little bit on FDI trends. So I'd like to give you a few numbers on what's been happening in the world of FDI, who's investing where and why. More importantly, I'd like to talk about some of the key drivers right now. What's driving corporate investment? What is driving where companies are choosing to invest now and where they might choose to invest in the future? I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about competition among investment promotion agencies. How competitive is this field that we work in? And then finally, I'd like to bring it back to you, to the IPAs in the room, the investment promotion agencies, and talk about the implications for you. How have investment promotion agencies around the world been responding to these trends? So most of what I'm going to be talking about is practical. There's no theory here. I'll be using a lot of examples from other IPAs. Most of those are positive examples. While we're waiting for IT to come and rescue us, maybe we can use the time to get to know you and do a quick round. Just please say your name and the organization you're from, and ideally the country that you're from as well. If we maybe start in the back, the gentleman there. Yep.
My name is Fabrizio Lazzari. I'm Director for FDI with the Italian Trade Agency in Dubai.
Excellent, thank you.
My name is Katerina Kamalova. I'm an Executive Director of the Finance Environment Group.
Okay.
Praveen Dattal, Regional Director with Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce.
Hello.
Ismail Al-Shahin, Deputy Executive Director of VIPA.
Andreas Vora, Research Coordinator VIPA.
My name is David Gray, I represent WildFrag Limited. We specialize in FDI products and consulting.
My name is Yusuf Hamad Al-Bulushi. I'm from Oman and I'm working in the Vision 2040 office. So
Okay.
for today.
Thank you.
My name is Ryan Lemper. I'm from Estonian Investment Agency and Investment Project Manager.
Mm-hmm.
My name is Ahmed Al-Mufti. I'm the Commercial Director for a project called East Bursaid Development in Egypt.
Okay. Hello.
Ahmed Latif, German Trade and Investment Managing Director.
Frederick Johnson, both for Global Partners, advising on tourism and hospitality, and also SDI.
Okay, thank you.
Muhammad from Kuala Lumpur City Hall, Nigeria.
Hello.
I'm Cosmo Mavrodinanu, and we're project manager from Romania.
Victor Mavrodinanu, we are representing a private project development company for Romania and Vietnam.
Okay. Hello.
I'm Jan Nurul, and I'm from Tajikistan Investment Development Agency.
Morning, Adalberto Neto from Brazil, Paraná Investment Agency, CEO, IPA for national level from Brazil.
Okay.
I'm Divya Pranav and I work for Invest India. I'm Dushyant Thakur, I'm Vice President at Invest India.
I'm Jennifer LaRocca, I'm an investment promoter for the Ministry of Commerce in Panama.
For Panama, okay.
I'm Pratiksha and I'm a volunteer.
Yeah, I'm also a volunteer.
Yeah, I'm Vedika, I'm also a volunteer for you.
All right, so since you're late.
Moussa Touré, CEO of Investment Promotion Agency of Mali.
Okay, Mali, thank you.
I'm Anton Paul, I'm with FDI Magazine.
All right.
And Subhash Pandey, Financial Advisor, Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, Government of India.
Okay.
Dr. Aisha Sheikh, I'm the CEO of the Medical Practice Pakistan.
Okay.
Varun Sood from the Investment Promotion Agency of Government of India, Invest India.
Great. Thank you very much. We've got an extremely diverse group geographically, as well as in terms of the organizations you represent. A lot of national IPAs here, some sub-national IPAs, a city administration, a couple of consultants, that's okay, media, so very good group. I think we'll have an excellent discussion as soon as the screen comes up. The problem is that there's a cable in here that's not connected to it. So he did?
So we have the best IT engineers.
Okay.
He tried. I think he's missing something.
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay.
Easy.
So if all else fails.
Germans again.
There you go. Excellent. So again, I apologize. I'm going to have to do a lot of reaching over here. Excellent. So we've been through the agenda, and it doesn't. There's no clicker. So we'll do this the old-fashioned way. And what I'd like to do is start off with some trends. So I'm going to show you some numbers first. Very few numbers. Some of these are from UNCTAD. The ultimate source is FDI Magazine with their database. And these will just give you a sense of what's happening in the world of FDI. So this line here represents total global investment flows since 2005. So this is the total amount of money that companies have invested, just gets better and better, have invested overseas over the last 11 years. So this includes greenfield investments, companies setting up new operations. It also includes mergers and acquisitions, companies buying other companies. It does not include equity investment. So it doesn't include companies taking minority or small shares in other entities. And you can see that it's kind of a peak here in 2006. It recovered a little bit to 2015, then it went down again. This is global. I spoke too early. Oh yes, here we go. This line represents total investment that went to the developed world. So this is the total amount of investment that went to what we call the developed world, which is Europe, the European Union, the US, Canada, Japan, Singapore, and a handful of other countries. And you can see it almost mirrors one-to-one global investment flows. You can see that there was a peak in 2007, things went down in the financial crisis, recovered, and then between 2015 to 2016, FDI went down again. It's kind of a different picture if you look at FDI flows to the so-called developing countries. So the developing countries are everyone apart from the developed countries, so that's India certainly, China, pretty much all of Latin America, Southeast Asia, Africa. If you look at that figure, it's kind of an upward curve. So it went up all the way to 2015. At some point here, it actually exceeded investment flows into the developed world. So more investment was going to the developing world than to the developed world. It's fallen off again, and it's now lower than the developed world. So that is a massive trend, because if you look at the difference here in 2007 between the investment going to the developed world and the developing world, and you look at how the developing world has caught up, that's a radical difference. And again, if you look at these peaks globally and developed countries, 2007, FDI has never really recovered since 2007. It still remains below the 2007 peak. Very different in the case of the developing countries, who reached their peak in 2015 and just now recently have seen investment fall off a little bit. Now, you see a similar picture if you look at greenfield investments. Again, this comes from the FDI markets database, which tries to measure, based on announcements, the number of actual greenfield projects. So companies setting up a new manufacturing plant, a new distribution center around the world. Globally, the chart looks something like this between 2003, 2015. Again, you had a peak in 2008. Things went down, they recovered a little bit, but 2015 they went down again. You look at the same distinction for the developed countries and the developing countries, and you see a similar picture, a peak just before the financial crisis. Interestingly, you see another peak here a couple of years ago. Okay? So what this implies is that total investment in the world is going down. It hasn't recovered from before the financial crisis, but the number of greenfield projects, by and large, continues to rise. The trend is positive. Simple mathematics, if the total investment number is going down but the number of projects is rising, that means that on average projects are getting smaller. And that is definitely a trend we see around the world. You certainly will still get mega projects that create 5,000, 2,000, 1,000 jobs, but on average projects are getting much smaller. The average FDI project into Western Europe, actually into all of the European Union, including the countries that joined most recently, is now around 25 jobs per project. Okay? So the days of companies coming into Europe and creating 500-person manufacturing facilities are kind of over. And that's an important message for those of you who are trying to attract FDI to achieve employment goals. Projects are getting smaller on average. Just a few more statistics. These are the countries that attracted the most FDI last year. Any surprises here? You've got the US in first place, UK in second place, China, Hong Kong. If you combine China and Hong Kong, that would put China in second place. For a while there, China was actually number one, but the US has come back and has taken the number one spot away from China. You've got Brazil, despite all the economic challenges in Brazil, still doing very well here in terms of attracting FDI. You've got Singapore, pretty much always in the top 10 in terms of FDI attraction. Netherlands, which is a statistical anomaly. A lot of holding companies are based in Netherlands, so investments flow through the Netherlands. but this doesn't actually imply that companies are setting things up there. Okay, so if you see the Netherlands, this is just a flow of how money, a function of how money flows between corporate entities. France, amazingly, still manages to be in the top 10 despite all the bad publicity it gets. Australia and India now in the top 10. India really has crept up in terms of greenfield projects, total investment attraction, probably thanks as well to the initiatives of the Indian government through the Make in India and other campaigns. So India is certainly in the top 10. One interesting change here, if you can read this, is this number. And what I've done here is compared 2016 to the year before the financial crisis, 2007. And you can see that most countries have come back. US plus 80%, China plus almost 70, Brazil plus almost 50%. The red countries, the ones that are negative, are all European countries. So, to qualify my initial message, FDI has not recovered since the financial crisis. It has in most parts of the world except Europe. Okay, so Western Europe's share of FDI has fallen from historically around 50%, 50, half of the world's FDI, to around 15 to 20% now. So that's a fundamental shift. One more slide with numbers, and then I promise no more numbers today. The one thing that is concerning, though, is if you look at other indicators. So we've looked at pure FDI now, but if you look at other indicators that kind of illustrate international activity of companies, one of the key ones you should be looking at is global trade flows. This is data from the World Bank. This is kind of concerning because global trade is still growing, but the rate at which it's growing annually has fallen every year for the last 7 years. This is the trend line. And if global trade starts to fall and container ships start to move around the world empty, and we've seen some big freight companies go bankrupt, that's worrying for FDI because FDI tends to follow trade. And if companies are doing less business internationally, selling less, in this case, goods and services internationally, this is goods and services trade, that will have an impact on FDI flows. So the way I would see the situation right now, and this is based on discussions with literally hundreds of companies over the last 6 to 12 months about their investment plans, discussions with many IPAs about their pipelines, is that there is a lot of uncertainty. There's economic uncertainty. What is happening economically? What is going to happen in the US? Will there be the Trump bump? Will there be a bonus for the US economy as a result of Trump? Or will the opposite happen? Is China recovering, growing, or is China on the verge of collapse because there's overcapacity and too much liquidity? Is the European Union safe now, or are the Greeks or some other country with their next financial crisis going to drag us down? So what is the situation? There is a lot of uncertainty, and this uncertainty has been around for the last 2 years at least. Coupled with that, we now have political uncertainty. Political uncertainty, again, drawing on events like Brexit. How is that going to affect the European Union? Will other countries choose to leave the EU? You've got political uncertainty, certainly in the US. What is Trump's policy going to be, both in terms of trade, but also in terms of ties to other countries? And political uncertainty is affecting FDI. You've got anti-globalization sentiment. You've got a president of the United States blatantly saying to corporations in his country, you should not invest overseas. Don't build that factory in Mexico. You've got anti-globalization sentiment coming from the general public. You've got protests against new facilities, protests against corporations. And all of this is leading to caution on the side of investors. Companies still want to invest. There's still an appetite for investment. They're still investing, but they're taking longer to make decisions. Investment decisions within companies have to be turned over and evaluated a lot more rigorously than in the past. And in terms of what that implies for you, companies expect a lot more from governments and IPAs with respect to the assistance that you're giving them. Okay. So these are some of the general trends. I'd like to continue on this note, talk more about corporate investment drivers. What's affecting corporate investors today? We just spoke about risk, political risk, economic risk, uncertainty. Risk is back. It's interesting to observe this. When I started, again, 21 years ago, the world was kind of entering this golden age. Most of the world was peaceful. You had Bill Clinton as president. Everybody was happy. You even had theories like unlimited growth, perpetual growth. We thought we were on this trajectory towards peace and everlasting prosperity. Okay? And companies kind of forgot about risk. And companies were willing to go to many places that they'd never considered in the past. So you had this movement of companies just pretty much discovering the world. That's changing, and companies are starting to become a lot more cognizant about risk. You have natural disasters. I think the earthquake in Japan showed a lot of companies that their supply chains can be disrupted and had a ripple effect. You've got armed conflict, which is bad in many parts of the world and is affecting directly corporate operations in many countries, disrupting supply chains, disrupting corporate activity, affecting FDI. You've got political and civil unrest. I'll include the threat of terrorism in that as well. I'll include domestic unrest. I'll include countries where there are coups d'etats. It doesn't matter if this is really impacting corporations. What matters is the perception that companies perceive this to be a potential risk. They perceive this to be a potential threat to their operations. You've got regulatory risk, which is huge. It's things like being sued in the US for foreign corrupt practices overseas. It's things such as environmental risk. Companies much more aware these days of being held liable, being held to account for what they do internationally. And finally, you've got anti-industry sentiment. Again, anti-globalization sentiment. This goes hand in hand. There is a backlash against big corporations, and there is in many parts of the world a backlash against foreign investors. This happens in developing countries. It happens where I'm from in Germany to some degree, where in some parts of the country you have a backlash against companies like Amazon because of their labor practices. This is not to say that it's anti-investment in general, but there are pockets of the population that are becoming more vocal. You can also see this in the reaction to big trade agreements. Okay? So companies are aware of this, and I believe there's a return to safety. Companies are looking at international investment options, and places they may have considered 5 to 10 years ago because those places promised a lot of return are now moving down the list because there might be some higher risk. So risks are up on the agenda. The other thing that is certainly happening, and this sounds like a bit of a cliche, but there is a battle for talent, a global battle for talent. Companies are struggling to find skilled people, and they will, in some instances, go anywhere in the world if you have those skilled people. Okay. A particular case, cybersecurity. This comes up all the time. Skills are in huge demand. You've got all kinds of different estimates how many cybersecurity professionals are required. 1 million. I've seen numbers like 10 million. The fact is these people are in strong demand, and there's a shortage of them. Okay, so companies like Lockheed Martin, IBM, Symantec, who are in cybersecurity, will go anywhere. They'll go to Australia. They'll go anywhere if there's a supply of cybersecurity professionals. Interestingly, it's not just highly skilled people who are in demand. This is a study that Manpower conducted 2 years ago. These are the professions that are most difficult to fill around the world. Sure, you've got engineers in 3rd place, IT in 9th place, but in 2nd place, you've got sales representatives. Okay? You have drivers in 5th place. And it's true, go to anywhere with a mining industry, go to Australia, the west part of Australia, go to Canada. It's very difficult to get people to drive trucks. And they make a fortune. A truck driver in Western Australia makes about $150,000 to $200,000 a year. Right? There's a shortage of drivers. There's a shortage of, believe it or not, accounting and finance staff. And those of you who are trying to attract back office, shared service type operations know this. There's a shortage of accounting and finance staff. So the reaction to this, by industry at least, is, well, if there's a shortage of staff, we can't find them, we'll just replace them with machines. Okay? This is a study that is based on Oxford University data on the probability that a robot will take your job within the next 10 years. It didn't include investment promotion professionals, so
Thanks, God.
I think we're safe for the time being. It didn't include any type of government officials or consultants for that matter, so I think we're okay. But what's interesting is if you look at number 2, accountants and auditors. Well, coincidentally, that's one of the hardest professions to fill, right? You've got salespersons, coincidentally, sales representatives, one of the hardest positions to fill. So there's clearly a business need here. If we can't find the people to do these jobs, let's replace them with machines. And this is happening. There are more studies on this. These are the countries in the European Union color-coded by the risk or the percentage of jobs in those countries that are vulnerable to being taken over by a machine or a robot. You can see the green ones have a slightly lower risk. Coincidentally, those are the ones with probably the highest skilled workforce, whereas the ones that tend to depend still on manufacturing and simpler operations on the periphery of the EU have a higher risk. But it's not just Europe where labor is expensive. It's Southeast Asia. This is a study done by ILO, the International Labour Organization. Same type of study, but for Southeast Asia. ILO found that 70% of jobs in Vietnam are at risk of being replaced by machines. These are all the people making clothes, making textiles, making toys. All of those people are at risk of being replaced. Is this going to happen? Yes. The question is, when is it going to happen? How quickly is it going to happen? Soon. But this has implications for all of you who are looking at FDI as a way to employ large numbers of people. Those of you who have young populations, high unemployment rates, and are trying to attract large projects with high job numbers, those projects are still there. They'll continue to be there. The question is, how long will they continue to be there? And how sustainable are they? In other words, once you've attracted them, once you've attracted that 2,000-person textile operation, how do you keep it there? How do you make sure that that employer moves up the value chain and does things that are more sophisticated so that they don't replace their employees with robots? Technology creates opportunities too. Question here, how many of you have a Facebook page? Okay. How many of you, legally or illegally, it doesn't matter, stream music or films from the internet? Okay, not that many? Okay, legally. So, okay, all right. So every time you do that, something is happening in a data center. Your Facebook page, you might know this, is probably hosted in Sweden, okay, in a huge data center there. So every time you use the internet, do things in the cloud, save a file in the cloud, you're triggering demand for data centers. And that demand for data centers is going through the roof. Okay? You speak to companies, this is a bit small, but leader is Amazon, Amazon Web Services, Google is in there. You've got Microsoft, you've got companies like Equinix, you've got Chinese companies like Alibaba who are now very active in data centers. These things, they can't build them fast enough. Okay? So this is, I'll read this for you. This is Microsoft. Microsoft just announced it's adding new data centers in Mumbai, Singapore, Sydney, Sao Paulo, Finland, and Frankfurt, and another one in the US, just in the next few months alone. If you go to Frankfurt in Germany, companies are lining up to build data centers. So everybody is trying to attract these things because they're very attractive investments. They're clean, typically. They use a lot of energy, but they don't pollute. They don't employ a lot of people, but the people they do employ are pretty much sophisticated jobs, and they can be used to attract other types of investment. So technology is creating opportunities. Another area where technology is creating opportunities is startups. The world seems to be obsessed with startups these days. In where I live, and Achim lives from Germany Trade and Invest, I moved to Berlin 14 years ago, and most people were unemployed. The few people who did worked for the government. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but when I moved to Berlin, Berlin had an unemployment rate of almost 20%. Okay? Now the unemployment rate in Berlin is, correct me if I'm wrong, around 7%. And most of those jobs have been driven by startups. Okay? Startups. So much money is being poured into startups, venture capital, that startups are able to scale up, grow very quickly, and hire people. This slide shows you in the US for the last 20 years almost, well actually 98 to 2012, the number of jobs created by companies based on how old those companies are. The blue is new companies, companies that are between 0 and 5 years old. The yellow is old companies, which tend to be bigger companies. And you can see the blue companies consistently create more jobs. The old, bigger companies actually destroy jobs. It's negative during recessions. They fire lots of people. IBM or companies like that, or Siemens, whatever the company is, if things aren't going well, we'll just get rid of 10% of our workforce. Smaller companies are less likely to do that. So small companies, startups, are an engine of employment. The difference is you need a lot of them to make an impact. And that's why we see a lot of IPAs focusing on startups. Just a few more of these trends. This is the last one. This is the prevalence of mergers and acquisitions. When companies expand overseas, you would like them as an IPA to go the greenfield route. You'd like them to build a factory in India. But very often they don't want to. They'd rather buy someone. And recently, the preference for acquisition has grown. A few things I think are driving that. One is there's lots of liquidity. Companies are have access to cash at very favorable conditions so they can make acquisitions. The second is risk aversity. Companies don't want to spend 2 years messing around with a greenfield investment when they can just buy someone that is already there. And the third thing, and then we'll get to that, is the entry of Chinese investors who have been buying up anything they can get their hands on until the government put capital controls in, and that's certainly impacting these numbers. So,
just had a quick question in terms of plug-and-play model. Have you seen that work across different parts of the globe where the infrastructure is ready, so your risk gets mitigated in that sense, so they can just come in, set up their equipment, and start manufacturing?
Massive. If you can offer that. The question is plug and play. In other words, in the US you would call it shovel ready. No matter what it is, but the investor can come in, and I'll get to one important aspect of that, and simply start their operation. You're taking a lot of risk. That's a huge competitive advantage. So, I'd like to talk about you for a few minutes, but before that, are there any other questions or comments?
Would it be possible to get a copy of this PowerPoint?
Absolutely, sure. I'm not sure how, but we'll manage. Any questions or comments from our panel? No? Okay, so we'll keep going in the interest of time. I'd just like to talk about you for a few minutes. All of you who are in this field know it's competitive. Well, let's talk a little bit about how competitive. So how many IPAs are there around the world? Amazingly, no one has ever really tried to measure this. So let's try and do this. Okay, so you have national IPAs. Some of you are here today from India, from Côte d'Ivoire, from Estonia. You then have regional, subnational. You've got a Brazilian state here. You have the Emirates here in the UAE. You've got 16 states in Germany. You've got 16 in Poland. You've got 29 states in India. Is it 29? So these are the subnational ones, regional ones. You then have local ones. Kuala Lumpur municipality, small cities, municipalities, towns, counties. Sometimes they're metropolitan areas. Then you've got all the special economic zones, free zones, you name it, ports who are very active in this, airport cities. Let's try to put some numbers on these. So the first one is easy. There are officially 195 countries. I think even North Korea has an investment promotion agency. Probably the only country that doesn't is the Vatican. Okay? So that one's pretty easy. Most of these are WIPA members. If they're not, they should be. Then regional. Again, I mentioned some of the numbers. 50 US states, 29 Indian states. How many regions are there in Turkey? With 26. You add up these together, I'm sure we're looking at over 1,000 around the world. Throw in all of the Chinese provinces, all of the India, the sub-national entities, sub-federal entities in Russia. Local cities, definitely over 1,000. Okay? This is a conservative number. And then the SEZs, there are 45 free zones in the UAE alone. Okay? How many free zones are there in China? I've read an estimate that China has 2,000 industrial parks. Right? Amazing. So let's be conservative, 2,000 around the world. So let's round this up and let's say there are 4,000 entities around the world actively trying to attract investment to their location, to their piece of the world, their site, their industrial park. What are they all competing for? Well, if it's greenfield investment, this is what they're competing for, 14,000 projects. So you've got 4,000 entities competing for 14,000 projects. So on average, you're entitled to 3.5 projects each. So I think if you went to your leadership at Make in India and said, we're going to get 3.5 projects this year. Our stretch goal is 5 projects. You'd have a bit of a challenge. Okay? So either the numbers are wrong, there are more projects, or this is an extremely competitive business. I think it's a bit of both. But I do think this is one of the most competitive fields to be in. And because of that, it's constantly changing, and IPAs are getting better all the time. This is fantastic. When I started working 21 years ago, you might not believe this, there was no internet. Didn't exist. Okay? So the way an IPA differentiated itself is they had a great brochure. Right? You had a brochure in color that was like state-of-the-art, best practice. That's a long time ago. Okay? So IPAs are getting better all the time. The fact that you're here today, the fact that courses like this exist, the fact that WIPA is providing services to its members, IPAs are getting better all the time. And one of the things that's amazing is the best practices are global. So 10 years ago, everybody spoke about Invest in Sweden and UKTI. Yes, nowadays you still have Singapore EDB or IDA Ireland. They're kind of the best practices. But I find best practices around the world. Latin America, Asia. I think that's where the really exciting stuff is happening. Investment promotion, innovation. Okay. I'm a member of something called the Site Selectors Guild. It's a group of site selection consultants. We had our annual meeting, you can't read this, in the US 3 weeks ago. And we gave awards to investment promotion agencies. Most of the agencies who won these awards were small US groups, Roanoke, small cities. Why did they win these awards? Because they're innovative, they're hungry, they're progressive, they're proactive. They're very good. We didn't give awards to big agencies. The international award, by the way, went to Macedonia. Okay? If you look at the UNCTAD awards that were handed out last year, Invest India in first place. You've got agencies, I admit, I've never heard of before. Cape Town and Western Cape, Lesotho, right? So these are the agencies that are doing innovative, exciting things. Now, despite all the progress, one of the things that agencies still struggle with is differentiating themselves. So this is a game I like to play. I've been playing for a long time. I'm going to show you the reasons a group of IPAs believe you should invest there. The typical 10 reasons or 7 reasons to invest in. And we're going to guess who it is. Okay? So here's a country that is cost competitive, has a strong and stable macroeconomic performance, free trade access, world-class infrastructure, qualified labor force. It has sectorial plans and a constantly improving business environment. Something happened to the font. Do you know which country this is? Think about it. This one has competitive labor costs, ease of operation, access to major markets, legal certainty, strategic location, that's important, operating costs, cultural power, etc., etc. Here's another one that has macroeconomic stability, imagine that. It's got excellent infrastructure, growing FDI, trade agreements. It's the cradle of culture. This one has economic strength. Micro, I don't know, but economic strength, supportive government policies, an educated workforce, etc. Think about your own 10 reasons to invest in. Do they look familiar?
Yes.
Okay. So you're not going to guess who this is. This is Morocco. This is Mexico. This is Macedonia. This is Malaysia. Now, the only thing these countries have in common is they all start with M. Okay? That's why I picked them. Right? Apart from that, they're completely different from one another. But they're all using the same slogans, the same arguments to attract investment. There are reasons for that. We don't have time to get into those today, but it's becoming increasingly difficult, but increasingly important to differentiate yourself. And these types of slogans are not going to get you anywhere. So let's move to the last section. I don't want to take up all the time. Talk about how IPAs are responding. The first thing IPAs are trying to do, given all these trends, given the risk of automation taking jobs, given the competition for FDI, is they're trying to move up the value chain. You've heard that expression many times. What does it look like in practice? This is the Czech Republic. 20 years ago, the Czech Republic was where people went for low-cost operations. Back office shared services, low-cost assembly. Czech Republic soon realized that if we're going to keep these companies here and stop them from moving to Romania or Bulgaria or Macedonia, we need to move up the value chain. So what are they targeting now? Advanced materials, nanotechnology, high-tech mechanical engineering, data centers. Okay. Sure, Czech Republic, Czech investors still happy if someone comes, as they did last year, and opens a big factory to make candles. Okay. Big company came, 400 jobs in candles, but what they're actively targeting, it says here, Czech Invest focuses on the support of those sectors in which it sees significant potential for investment. for development. They're moving up the value chain. This is Costa Rica. Yes, they're trying to attract agribusiness, certainly. But they're also trying to attract advanced manufacturing, life sciences, R&D. China is the leading example of this. This is their strategy to 2025, to move from low-cost manufacturing to sophisticated manufacturing in these sectors. One of the ways they're doing that is by buying companies in these sectors around the world. One more example. This is Thailand. Thailand is not interested in making our bicycles or tennis shoes. Thailand wants to program our software. Thailand wants to make our aircraft parts. Okay? And they've just put in place, about a month ago, a whole new set of incentives designed to attract these high-value, sophisticated industries. Okay, so this is happening around the world. IPAs are moving up, the countries are moving up the value chain, and IPAs, as the instrument of government, is following that in terms of what they're trying to attract. Now, what do you need to attract these types of industries, high-tech industries? One word. What's the key requirement? Talent. You need talent, you need skills. And skills are becoming the main differentiator. Now, at a minimum, IPAs need to know the skills that are there and where to find them. Okay? So I'm always baffled when I'm working for a company. I also advise companies on where to invest. We call an IPA and we say, very simple project. Our company is looking to set up an IT back office operation. Can you tell us how many software graduates you have, what programming languages they can work in, how many of those speak English and what they make? And the IPA doesn't have the data. So you need to know what skills you have, how readily available those are, how much they cost, and where companies can get them. That's the basics. The exciting development is that IPAs are now playing a role in actually creating the skills. Okay, so this is Louisiana, the state of Louisiana in the US. Louisiana for the last 9 years has had a workforce program called Fast Start, where they actually build the workforce for the company. They will go to IBM, they will go to Electronic Arts, and they'll say, what do you need? And IBM will say, we need 500 of these people. Here's their profile. And Louisiana says, give us 2 years, we'll make them for you. They don't clone them. They actually take people, work with the education system, train them, and put them in a building for IBM. And all IBM has to do, your plug-and-play concept, is show up, the skills are there. That's being emulated. This is Northern Ireland. They have the Assured Skills program, very similar program, where Northern Ireland will work with employers and say, well, what do you need? How can we create those skills for you if we don't have them already? The interesting thing here is these programs have existed for a long time, but now IPAs are actually driving these programs. IPAs are actually the ones initiating and driving them. So there's a role here for investment promotion agencies. IPAs are using a broader definition of investment. Yes, we'd all like to attract greenfield investment. We'd all like to attract Tesla's new factory. We'd all like to attract a Boeing manufacturing plant. Not all of us can. So infrastructure is now something that IPAs chase. This is Australia, who I do a lot of work with. One of their main priorities is to attract infrastructure investment. Investment into roads, bridges, ports, tunnels, schools, prisons, whatever it is. Okay? This is the Czech Republic. They have a, I think, very innovative program to give companies that are interested in buying something in the Czech Republic options. So they actually have a list on their website of companies in the Czech Republic, anonymous, that are up for sale. That are not bankrupt, they're going concerns, but they've indicated an interest in being bought. So the next time a Chinese company says, we'd like to buy something, they actually have something to offer them. Okay? Startups, Hong Kong, Invest Hong Kong for the last few years has actively tried to, or is trying to attract startups from around the world for the reasons that we've mentioned. Just a few more slides and then we'll be done. How am I on time? Okay? I'll hurry a little bit. Just a few more, I promise. One of the things that's becoming a lot more important is aftercare. Why is aftercare becoming more important? Well, again, if you've attracted someone and the types of things they're doing in your country become outdated, there's a high risk they'll leave. So it's very important to work with investors to make sure they're continuously upgrading their activities. This is going to be a focus of this conference too. And in the past, this was normally something that developed countries did. Okay? So if you look at Korea, in Korea, something like 80% of FDI comes from existing investors. So for the Korean government, it's very important to do aftercare well, and they've got a very established, very effective program. In developing countries where there was a lot of new investment, aftercare was never really important in the past, or that important. That's changing too. Take a look at Costa Rica. Costa Rica had a wake-up call about 3.5 years ago when Intel, their biggest and most important investor, said, we're closing our manufacturing plant in Costa Rica. Okay? The Minister of Trade of Costa Rica is here at this event. He's going to be on a panel that we're doing together on Monday afternoon. I'll ask him about that. But one of the reasons Costa Rica now does a lot of aftercare is that the Intel closure triggered a lot of other closures. Bank of America decided in the wake of Intel, they were going to let go 1,000 people in Costa Rica. What happened? Costa Rica changed. So the environment that these companies found when they set up there 10 years ago was no longer there. It had become more expensive. The jobs had changed. The demands of employees had become higher. And Costa Rica simply didn't recognize that. They've recognized that now, and aftercare is a priority. Partners have become more important. How many of you, apart from investing, had a budget increase in the last year as an IPA? Okay. How many of you have had an increase in the goals? Yes? Okay, Germany. Good, we need to speak. How many of you have had an increase in the goals? The amount of the investment that you have to attract? All right, so you're being asked to do more with less. And one of the ways you can do that is by working with partners. Okay? The obvious place to start is with other IPAs in your country. The Dutch agency, the NFIA, Netherlands Foreign Investment Agency, in 2014 introduced a new model. They introduced a network called the Invest Holland Network with all of the regional and city IPAs in the Netherlands. It's not just marketing. They actually have a very integrated operation. They have a shared CRM system. They have co-funding of international trips. They do cooperative targeting of sectors. They have sector teams. They really are working together to take their resources further. Okay? You can go further than that. This is the IDEA Ireland who does this amazingly. Their partners are everybody. It's other state agencies, other branches of government, the private sector, industry associations, academia. And again, they really seek input from all of these other organizations in developing and implementing their strategy. So no IPA, no matter how big or how successful, the IDEA Ireland has 500 people. You would argue, they would say, we don't need partners. They are very active in terms of reaching out to everybody in Ireland and making sure that everybody supports their mission. That's critical. And then finally, this is my last slide. Because of these changes, because of these differences, IPAs are under the spotlight. Again, when I started 21 years ago, you could kind of coast as an IPA. People didn't really pay too much attention. That's not the same anymore. Ministers want results. Heads of state want results, especially when elections are around the corner. You're under scrutiny. People are asking you how you spent the money, where you spent the money, what results you've generated. So IPAs, much like public companies, are being forced to communicate and to publish a lot of information about themselves. If you haven't done this already, I argue you should. A few examples. This is Ohio in the US. Very, very good at communicating with stakeholders, to government, to the public. This is their annual report and strategic plan, which shows their results. It shows the economic impact that they've had on the state of Ohio. All of the state of Ohio, it includes their pipeline of projects. Fully transparent. The only thing they don't disclose is the names of the companies they're working with. They do disclose those once they've won the project. Nobody in Ohio can accuse them of holding anything back or being secretive. Okay? An agency that has done this really well continuously is Lyon in France. Take a look at their annual report. It's on their website. It's, for me, state of the art. Very transparent and very good at answering the question, why do we need an agency? Why do we spend so much money on an IPA? What does this bring us? Incidentally, this is something that WIPA spends a lot of time on as well, is helping IPAs communicate with stakeholders, helping IPAs formulate messages for ministers, heads of state, as to why an IPA is important and why governments should support investment promotion. So I've taken up a lot of your time already. I suggest we leave questions.
If they want now, not to lose the track.
Okay, so we can have time for questions now if you have any.
I noticed after your presentation, more people are coming.
We have to
should move to another room, to the main plenary room.
We have to start again. Any questions or any comments? So.
Yeah. Thanks for the informative presentation. If you could, make a priority, what is the best recipe? You said, everything changing now, and the idea is need also to change. You talk about not only the internet and social, and what about the investment mapping? Because sometimes investors come in, but we are just providing some high-level direction for them. So what's your?
That's a key point. I think you've addressed it. Is I would argue, and I've been saying this for a long time, is the key thing is to be targeted. Everybody says that, but in practice it doesn't happen very frequently, is to know exactly what you want, what you're trying to attract, study that industry, and develop value propositions that are customized and tailored to something highly specific. Okay, and this is something that India is doing very effectively, something, believe it or not, Japan is doing very well right now in areas such as medical technology, is rather than trying to attract everything or having, this huge list of sectors that you're good in, you might be good in, on a day-to-day basis, be very focused. Any other questions?
You showed statistics which highlight the fact that corporates investing in hard assets are sort of retrenching, hence the declining trend in FDIs. Given the rise in populism, being Brexit, US elections, to a different extent in Europe, do you think that's going to have a bearing on it? And do you actually need to see any tangible examples?
Yes. So short term, I think it will have an impact. And I'm seeing that in the US. A lot of US companies, and my colleagues in the Site Selectors Guild all confirm this. A lot of companies, international companies that are doing things in Mexico, have put those projects on hold or are moving them to the US. A lot of companies in the US have said, we're going to build and expand in the US. The same is happening in other parts of the world where companies are either being really truly patriotic or trying to, get in the government's good books. But I think it's a short-term effect. I think it's a 2, 3, 5-year effect. I think globalization is unstoppable. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe a year from now I'll be standing here going, I shouldn't have said that. But I think the momentum is such that, and companies have such a vested interest overseas that this is something that is going to continue happening.
What are your thoughts on this when we compare international FDI statistics, that there are 2, 3 different systems of when the definitional changes of what constitutes FDI. In your interaction, for example, you mentioned that about the minority shareholders, shareholding in existing company would not qualify. Some countries may capture up to a certain threshold, even less than 51%. Some would also include shades of hybrid instruments. So how valid or fair are the international comparisons?
I think that's, again, it goes back to knowing what you'd like to attract. I would argue you should be as open as possible. I've worked with some locations around the world who say we will only help greenfield investors creating over 500 jobs. Well,
No, not that. Not for individual countries.
Yeah.
When we compare across the world.
Oh, when you're comparing statistics.
International comparison of statistics.
Oh.
So each country may be capturing and defining FDI in a different.
Everyone does it differently. I mean, UNCTAD tries to smooth those differences out to some degree to have a common measurement. But you're right. Each country does measure it differently. I would take any FDI statistics with a grain of salt. They're indicative, but they're not really precise. Some of them have 10%, some of them have majority ownership, so you're absolutely correct. The Netherlands is a good case in point. None of this, or very little of that investment actually stays in the Netherlands. It just flows through the Netherlands, in and out. So FDI statistics are imperfect. One more question? Oh, okay. So.
Sorry, just one last question. What would you advise for going up API, API in a country with a high risk, political risk, any kind of risk of with the bad perception of,
Right.
of stability. Because as you know, the more the country with troubles, with some high risk, these are the countries which need more investment somehow.
Yeah.
What would you advise to the IPA of this country?
Right. I mean, simply speaking, I think there are two approaches. First of all, I don't think Côte d'Ivoire has a high risk. So, but I think Côte d'Ivoire has an excellent reputation. But there are two ways to go about it. One is to offer huge returns. So high risk, you need high returns. So if you can somehow tell or convince investors that the risk is going to be worth it and the returns are going to be high enough, and they believe you and it's credible, and you can actually help them achieve those returns, you're on a good way. And the other is but this requires lots of money, is marketing. You look at Colombia. Colombia is an amazing country. Skilled workforce, great infrastructure. People still perceive Colombia to be risky. It's amazing. But Colombia has been counteracting that for years now with marketing and promotion and PR and branding, and that is slowly starting to pay dividends. Yeah. Bostian? Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
I need this, huh? Do they ask?
Shall I open it for you? I'll open it for you.
Where is it? Maybe it's here,
No, it's here.
Oh, it's here. Okay.
So I hope you will not leave now after Andreas' very interesting presentation, It's hard to compete as an institution, to some very much practitioner, And he is really amazing, and I really appreciate Andreas, and thank you very much.
Sorry to be
So I need to get, okay.
Sorry.
We are always trying to escape this kind of things, but okay, maybe. Here.
Sorry.
Does it work?
Yeah.
Is it better? Yeah. Okay. So why about multi-stakeholder dialogue? This was some of the questions already which were raised now. We all know that you are kind of intermediate body among governments and investors. And what we just recently realized in our training that we did with International Labour Organization is that business aspect is totally different than what you can get from your governments. And many times, today also discussion went, you are in a kind of internal promotion among the other stakeholders in the government, so the other agencies, the other ministries. So the multi-stakeholder dialogue, we believe, is extremely important to be able to be as much as possible efficient and to understand different kind of approaches to the FDI. Investor wants something, you understand investor, but then maybe your government doesn't understand what investor wants, or they don't listen to you. So that's why we will try to speak a bit about the multi-stakeholder dialogue. So here we come to kind of metrics. So who are the stakeholders? As I said, investors, governments, enterprises, or let's say companies, the investors, the enterprises, the bigger, and communities. Also communities and the public opinion. Sometimes there is a wish from the government to attract a very big investment, but then the community comes and says it will affect to the environment, it will affect to the, let's say, our jobs. So you are non-stop in between of this kind of fights. And I guess then there are goals. Establishment of investment, investor satisfaction, community satisfaction. So how to mitigate these different approaches and different understandings. And in agenda, of course, we see constructing stakeholder relationships. So you are in the middle. So you should have good relations with all of these stakeholders. First, of course, especially with your governments and or to whoever you report, because otherwise they will replace you. I was the head of an IPA from my country in Slovenia, And I can tell you how it works when there are 5 or 6 ministers who change and who understands that this IPA, one would say, excellent IPA. The other one would say, there is no need, let's simply dismiss it. The other one would say, no, the goals are not correct. We don't want this and this investments. The other one would come, we say, we prioritize this and these sectors. So you are in between always. And on the other side, there are investors who expect something. And they say, we want this and this. Okay, super, good. And mostly people in IPAs, they are business mindset people. They are very much business oriented. And then they come to the real bureaucrats into different ministries, and they say, excuse me, Mr. Minister, I was coming how many times, or to the Prime Minister. So it's this and that what the companies want. Yeah, excuse me, but this is not possible because we don't support this and that. I guess you understand. From your smiles, I can see that you are very familiar with these things. Of course, obstacles, lack of transparency, legal administrative requirements, lack of efficiency, we all spoke. So this is, it's up to you. You are like a hero which tries to fight in these different kind of battlefields. And what is your role? Of course, to identify barriers, to simplify procedures, to promote coordination. Now I would say again, it would be great if you are that one who can decide. But many times you are not that one who can decide. So you need to persuade your bosses. The best way is, for example, Talia is happy. She is reporting directly to President of Tatarstan. There are many agencies who has this luck that they report directly to the decision makers. So the strategy, the vision of the country is directly, let's say, deployed to the IPA, and IPA then can really, being very much empowered, can execute this vision or strategy. But this is not the case. This is the case maybe in 15 to 20% of the cases. All the rest, we speak about the struggles that I was mentioning before. So, how we try to link? The new strategy of WIPA goes to really to interact with different kind of stakeholders. We are always trying to be in touch with governments, and whenever I have opportunity to meet with ministers or the prime ministers, for example, I met in Ecuador with the president. It really helped, actually, I must say. They gave much, let's say, higher emphasis to the IPA after these discussions, because if someone else says about you something to your officials, it helps more. I'm sure you would agree. When you come to your minister and say, excuse me, this is this and that, he would say, yeah, maybe, you know. But then somebody else from outside comes. Maybe Andreas would come, or I come, or whoever comes and says, this, dear Mr. Minister or President, this would really help to your country if you give this and these skills, or I mean empowerments to your IPA. And then he said, oh, maybe you are right. So this is where we see our main role, actually, the advocacy role, with the different kind of stakeholders. Academia as well. WIPA is cooperating with different kind of, let's say, academicians. They are also powerful, believe me. It's not only the papers that they are producing, but they are influencing. For example, recently we met with Jeffrey Sachs. He's one of the most influential economists in the world. And through this kind of people, let's say opinion leaders and makers, we can influence the different kind of stakeholders, which will give more trust to our members, to IPAs. International development organizations. So all international organizations, you know probably that WIPA has a very strong consultative committee. It's a World Bank, with them we work a lot. It's UNCTAD who established WIPA. It's UNIDO, so industrialization. It's ILO, International Labour Organization, so about the jobs, which we all spoke before. Jobs are one of the best benefits that come from FDI. Recently, International Chamber of Commerce. So the new strategy, the new vision is to put the business closer to the IPAs. We sincerely believe that when the business will also understand the new needs, the new paradigm, let's say the paradigm shift about FDI, then all these flows will start to go around. And of course, World Bank and OECD, that are also our consultative committee partners. Through them, we really disseminate the idea of how important IPAs are. And believe me, this is a very new thing. I'm very much surprised. And okay, Andreas is longer in this area. My background comes from a business. I was 15 years in international business, mostly, let's say, in market development and also in investment for some time. Then I was in diplomacy. I was trying to understand from that point of view. Then I came to be a head of IPA. And believe me, it's very, very important to understand all these different kind of approaches. And it's not really that FDI is a very known topic. There is no university, by the way, who would really teach about the investment promotion, or let's say investment promotion and facilitation. This is the next step what WIPA will do to try to unify also the kind of investment promotion, let's say Esperanto, if I may call it like this, like a language of investment promotion. And all these organizations are trying to do many different things. But what I never understand is they are going parallel to the same goal. So they do not interact that much. Recently, 1-2 years, they started to be closer. And where WIPA comes onto the stage is exactly here. To try to put all these powerful houses together, to interact them, to make a common goal. And we all know, maybe it looks strange to speak about SDGs, so Sustainable Development Goals, that were adopted and accepted from the UN countries in 2015. But believe me, if we want to preserve our planet, if we want to have let's say, the mitigation of poverty, so decrease the poverty and to create the well-being of people, we should follow these goals. Even companies are aware of importance of being sustainable. And of course, as Andreas said, we can't simply force the countries and say you should only focus on greenfield, which is the most, let's say, sustainable one. But we should try to mitigate, let's say, the risks which comes with irresponsible investments. So we should at least try to focus to mitigate, let's say, some factors which creates more opportunities to be unsustainable. So to try to put it as much as possible sustainable. So all these stakeholders, private sector, investment agencies, funding organizations, funding, we come to this. There are many projects around, many ideas, but it's not that there is no money. There is a lot of money. It's just if the people would believe to invest the money. So what we are trying to do recently, we are focusing on least developed countries together with United Nations, directly actually from New York. We are trying to help to these IPAs who are a bit lacking the knowledge, who doesn't have even support from their own governments. So we are trying to develop some special programs for these kind of agencies. And there is a money, just there is a need to persuade them. So we are using all these organizations that I mentioned before to try to support WIPA in this struggle to start some new, let's say, new way of FDI. And the same comes with investors. They have a lot of money, but there are a lot of risks. You know, geopolitical changes, terrorism threats, and all these things. But somehow, we believe that if we try to do our best as IPAs, as investment promoters, investor will always come, as Andreas said, maybe in the most unstable political economies, you should offer them something, either high returns or something, or very quick returns. But we all know that this is not the case. Why we also promote regional, Andreas was speaking about competition. We try to instill philosophy of cooperation instead of competition. So we should not feel as competitors, we should feel as partners. And there are some outward promoters, there are some inward investment promoters, so these are already partners. They can help to each other. And I'm sure today, I don't know how many IPAs altogether, I guess more than 10, 15, I don't know. You will discuss, you will exchange your opinion, your challenges, your fears. And believe me, why, for example, regional cooperation is always very important? Because the investor comes and tries to understand where to invest. First, the investor will decide for the region. So if the region is stable, if the region looks friendly, if the region looks promising as a business environment-wise as well, Then they will decide, and they will come once to one country, and the other will join to the supply chain. Next time they will go to the another. So we should always feel as a partners. We should help to each other. If we want really to achieve in a sustainable environment and sustainable investment in the future, we should be partners, not competitors. I was speaking a lot already, so I guess there will be many of the things on the slide which were already said. So advocates, this is one of the most priorities of WIPA, to advocate in the name of our members towards governments, whoever, either ministries, departments, presidents, prime ministers. So to try to empower, to give the value to you, trying to make debates, discussions. We are trying to join, we try to be present in every possible, let's say, event that really gives some value, discussions, conferences, some initiative, let's say with World Economic Forum as well, E15 initiative. All this kind of, we recently visited World Trade Organization. We all know that World Trade Organization members, so the countries, are against dealing with FDI. We sincerely believe that FDI and trade goes hand in hand, although the promotion of trade or investment is a bit different. But this is just another part of the coin. And I try to persuade to Azevedo, the Director General, to try to discuss. There will be in Buenos Aires the G20 agenda, and I guess they will try to discuss about investments as well, although I don't think there will be any achievements, because from the GATT let's say, agreement on, there are, let's say, attempts to put investments into the discussion, but not really successful. So it enables decision makers to have a more private sector focus. This is what is also one of the, let's say, paradigm shifts. So to put more business, we are discussing, actually visiting and meeting the investors all over the world. I was recently with Cisco, I was with Nestlé. There are these big giant companies who are having, let's say, the officials who are specialized to work with, let's say, governmental sector. This is a new, let's say, trend. And they are trying really to understand the bureaucracy. And many times we are discussing, I'm joining to the debates of, let's say, international investment regime changes, reforms. And then you come to you see around, I don't know, 200 delegates inside, for example, in UN, wherever you go. And then you understand that there is one or two companies. And we are discussing about the regimes which will affect the investors. And I always say, I can't stop myself, and I always say, so excuse me, where is the business sector here? We are discussing how we will shape their future, and we do not listen to them. Right? And this is where WIPA comes, actually. We are an NGO. We are very lucky, actually. If you are an intergovernmental organization, you are burdened with the decisions of your parliaments. We are NGO, so we do not have these burdens. We are free to go. We are just trying to follow your advices, your rules, your challenges, your, let's say, wishes, and try to advocate in your behalf. Again, sharing domestic and regional experiences, I guess you touched a bit upon of these things. There is always a discussion if one country should promote only FDI. If it's good that they are giving some special incentives, if I may say like this, to foreign direct investments. I believe, in general, in the future, there is no other option than it will be kind of equal, the foreign direct investments and also local, because we all know it's very much interconnected. If we do not have, let's say, domestic investments, if we do not support SMEs, let's say startups, scale-ups, if we do not support our local companies to be able to create a perfect business environment, then we will also not attract foreign direct investments. And we all know that there are backward and forward linkages, which help to develop the economy, which help to develop our small and medium companies, which put our companies into the global value chains. So all this connection is very much important. And also, of course, the IPAs, more coordination is needed, I guess, between national and subnational and city agencies or whatever agencies you call it, or development agencies. There are many, and with whomever we speak, we realize that there is not really a deep connection. There is no control, and many times investor comes, of course they would like to go to that local state maybe and discuss there. But I guess it's very important that the national agency is also following this, because maybe there are national rules which apply to the whole, let's say, big state, and then the other local ones are different. So this connection is also very important. Many, as you can see, dialogues. That's why we call it multi-stakeholder dialogue. So again, sustainability, it comes on top. We sincerely believe that sustainable investments are more than needed. I showed recently one video from one Swedish professor that just died. He was saying how big difference is becoming between developed and, let's say, developing. And then he said at the end, the Western world is deciding what will be done. And then in the end, there is one small Lego cube, and the rest, a lot of cubes are developing or, let's say, least developed countries. So sustainability really matters, does matter, and the sustainable development goals matter. Actually, this I spoke before, so I will skip it. So constructive stakeholder relationship. There is a need to somehow create mechanism for regular consultation with investment stakeholders, such as annual investment conference that, for example, we are organizing. Why we believe that different kind of stakeholders should come regularly together. This is what we try to do in our World Investment Conference. We bring really all, like ministers, representative of states, IPAs, of course, as at the first place, and we try to put a lot of investors next to it. It's not to bring the investors to try to, let's say, attract the attention of the IPAs which are there, but to give their own perspective. So what they would like to do, what they want from you. The life cycle, of course, we should be very close in the whole life cycle of the investments. So from the trying to decide which region they will go, eliminating some regions, coming to particular region, then deciding to which particular state. So we should be very close and interact in all these stages with when the investor let's say, is trying to decide. Of course you will compete. At the end, you all compete for the same investment. But if you do not feel it as a forefront, let's say, as a competition, believe me, in Africa, what we saw last year, we made in Côte d'Ivoire actually. 20 IPAs came. There was in Caribbean as well. CAIPA is doing a great job. For example, 20, 25 IPAs joins. And they try to even discuss, by the way, Mauritius as well. They try to do partnerships. They try to show together. For example, Mauritius case is that they try to be as a, let's say, hub for the Africa and the entry point and the, let's say, financially entry point. They realized, and they are always saying to us, we realize that if we compete among each other, we are just giving a bad signal to investors. So we should try to be, we will never, of course, share all the details. But if we discuss and try to make some common things, let's say, visible and be transparent and be, let's say, promising, then the investors will like that particular region. Sooner or later, they will invest into each of these countries, sooner or later. This is what, for example, I was mentioning before. There is a UN Global Compact. Around 8,000 companies committed to try to be sustainable in their investments. But in reality, they do not have the chance to comment on laws, on regulations, and on policies. They would like to, actually, believe me. We speak with the people, we speak with with CEOs of the big companies. They would like to comment, but they are not let. And this is where we try to, let's say, advise to these big organizations, although you should understand this is a huge bureaucracy. and a very precise decision-making process in these intergovernmental organizations. So they can't, for example, I was discussing recently with WTO, so World Trade Organization, they can't even, according to statutes, bring the companies to the main sessions when they are discussing. It's forbidden. So it's impossible actually to really understand what the companies want. And it's all about trade. So what is all about trade? It's about companies. And this is where we try also to push into each possible opportunity to try to push, to put business together into this decision-making process. Responsible business conduct. I guess all these big organizations are trying to discuss about responsible business conduct. I was recently in one conference that, of course, there was a big opposition from the representative of trade unions that investors are just coming, they are exploiting the workforce and everything. And but then one company said, I guess it was Nestlé, but excuse me, if you only speak about this, so then obviously you don't need the investment if you are discussing this. So we should be pragmatic, I guess. Of course, when they come, they should not only come, especially if they are resource-seeking investors. Try to take your natural resources. They should give something to your community. And recently, there were many cases that even Chinese, which are always blamed to be just coming and taking everything and being very much negative, they are trying to give something to communities as well. They are trying to be more sustainable. Of course, to bring sustainable investment to the top of the agenda and decent job creation and well-being of people. With International Labour Organization, we are really trying to do some concrete things. Jobs are one of the, let's say, best outcomes that comes from each foreign direct investment. And we all know that foreign direct investment is not all about to bring the money into the particular country. It's also to bring the new energy, the new blood, the new understanding of how you should treat with the people, what kind of job you should create. So together with ILO, we are trying to promote investment which brings decent job creation, to the, let's say, some kind of equal opportunities for everyone. Trying also to discuss about, we all know that now the talents are the buzzword as well. So, but we should also create the environment that we are able to let's say, to create these talents that will later serve to any kind of investment, either domestic or foreign. So this is one of the, let's say, mandates that we are trying to do with International Labour Organization. And believe me, it's not all about the unions. International Labour Organization is very much broad. They understand, maybe it's also about the leadership. They understand it's not only about protecting the, let's say, the employees' rights. They also try to understand how we should somehow balance the investment, although it's, let's say, blue-collar workers. I mean, they are getting the jobs at the end. Of course, there should be some standards, what kind of jobs are these, and there is no child abuse or all this child labor. But still, we should also give something to investors. We should not always, that's why at that time there was a big clash actually among the trade union representative and the company. Because then they are saying, okay, why we would invest actually? Then you should pay to your own people, which is not the case. Investment facilitation. We all know it's not about promotion, everything. So what we promote, what we promise, we should then provide. And here it comes the struggle between IPAs and the governments later on. So you promote something and you promise, and then the investor comes and then one farmer there says, I will not give this land. That was already promised to investor. So this means facilitation. Try to prevent as much as possible in advance these disputes, to make its business environment as much as possible stable, not only politically, also economically, and all these regulations. We all know it's the problem is always in details. When you read the big text, no problem, but the small text applies under the line. And then the investor comes, and you know the risk of investor. He's already promised to get that land, and then, of course, here it's ecological problem, or this one doesn't give the land, or, I mean, you know better these things. And then this opportunity cost increases like crazy. And this is what investors, they don't like actually. They like to be kind of secure. And that's why they are many times asking us, what do you think about investment, incentives? It's good incentives, but incentives are not the main point of the investment promotion. First is what you provide as a business environment, as a promise. Do you keep your promises? Do you regulate your environment properly with laws? And then investment comes as a cherry on the cake at the end, let's say. They will maybe decide, okay, they will say these guys offered us some cherry on the cake, so maybe it's good for us. But first you should provide, so that's why investment facilitation. So transparent, effective, efficient administrative process for business and investors. Increase capacity. So these kind of trainings are also, and the other trainings that we are doing are also about, let's say, capacity building. Also, it's not only the knowledge about the FDI promotion and, let's say, facilitation. It's also to understand the broader idea, to understand, let's say, to share the experience with your colleagues. I'm sure each one of you can contribute to each one of you with different kind of understandings from your markets. And this is where it comes. Many times I say, that's why I said before, please be interactive. It's not about we are telling, you all know this. It's about let's share the experiences. Let's share what we can do. Maybe you have some idea, you have some idea. The other ones have some other idea. And then we will create some, let's say, as I always say, FDI Esperanto, that we would understand. And we will also be able to defend better in front of investors and in front of governments as well, or communities. Feasibility studies. Of course, I don't know how many IPAs, I don't have this statistic, but are really aware prior to any investments, what would, for example, particular investment bring. This is also what we are always asked, but unfortunately, we have a very small team and a limited budget. Otherwise, all these things are very much important. Try to, prior to any, let's say, preparation of strategy, to understand, to estimate what will particular investment bring to you, how it will affect the environment, how it will affect the, positively affect to the development, for example. So feasibility studies. I know that you are always facing the budget constraints, and they are always trying, that's why Andreas asked before. And how many? Only 1 or 2? Germany, right, was the increase of budget. Otherwise, they are always trying to decrease. And what I never understood, I came from business, and then they told me I had pretty good budget, actually, 20 to 30 million euro per year. And they were telling me, so what is my plan? My plan is to spend that 30 million euro, right? Which is, for me, what I came from business, I was always reporting how I saved, right? Now in VIPA we saved, we cut the cost to half and we quadrupled activities. This is what I value actually. And this is what I report to my steering committee. And many times they were telling me, okay, then buy some car just to spend, because if you don't spend the money, next year we will cut the budget, right? That's right. Interesting, right? Okay, this is the fact which we should live with actually. So, okay, this we already said, so we can skip it. So the purpose of IPAs. I say in one of my interviews, there is a hero needed, an IPA is needed to try to deal with a lot of challenges. We should put, let's say, the role of FDI is becoming more and more important for the development, for sustainable development. So that is why, believe me, you are becoming a heroes. We can feel it. VIPA feels this in the recent 1 year. IPAs are becoming a heroes. People are more and more aware what is investment promotion and facilitation. And they are more and more aware, even the ministers and the others, they are still not admitting yet, but believe me, sooner or later they will give more empowerment to IPAs. Because they will understand that how important this is. So proactive investment promotion, okay, they were asking me recently in MIPIM in Cannes how the web page, for example, matters. If it matters, of course it matters. I can tell you from the VIPA, a couple of years ago our web page was very bad. Now, 4 times it increased. We have, I don't know, 200,000 ranks higher than before, and 2.2 million now. It's increasing, and believe me, because of this, the visibility and our, let's say, ability to be even more active is rising day by day. So even the less possible developed IPA, if at least there is some first trust from the web page, the investor would say, okay, let's at least consider a bit. Otherwise, if there is nothing special there, but of course, there should be some background. If you just promise many things on the web page and then you don't deliver anything, of course, you are doing a negative propaganda. But at least it's very important. And proactive investment, going to some fairs. Here, I guess, is also some opportunity. Going around. I'm non-stop on the plane, from one event to another. But believe me, it's worth it. I suffer sometimes, also private life suffers, and I'm sure you understand these things. You are also away a lot. But without this, there is nothing. Direct correlation between marketing spent on investment promotion and increase in FDI. Do you agree with this? How much you put into it, that much you harvest. This is, I guess, very basic logic. So you are the crucial, again, I'm saying here, the crucial, let's say, point when it comes to job creation, economic prosperity, decreasing of poverty. And nowadays, you would not believe that even the big guys like OECD and, okay, UNCTAD is very much connected to the investment promotion and facilitation. But the others are now trying to put investments into the first plan. So it means the era of FDI promotion, okay, our good friend from UNCTAD, James Zen, as a, let's say, top figure in the investment promotion, is saying there is a need for a paradigm shift. There is a need to shift the investments towards more sustainable investments. From total liberal investments, so let's just bring me money, whatever it is, to a bit more thoughtful investments. And this is what we are trying to advocate everywhere possible. So you are an advocate. It's not only VIPA. First, you are the advocates. So public service, 80% of IPAs that we surveyed are part of the governments. So you are public bodies. But you are, on the other hand, entrepreneurs. You are that one who try to, let's say, spread the business understanding. So you try to advocate to investors and you try to advocate to your governments. I guess to investors it's easier to advocate if the government supports behind, right? As I said, of private sector or corporate culture. This is a very important saying. So you try to advocate the corporate culture within your governments. And we all know, I used to work for Ministry of Foreign Affairs as well, in diplomacy. Although I worked as economic counselor. But still, the real bureaucracy, and especially ministries like Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they do not have any real clue about what the business is and what the investments are. We all know that there are not many cases. For example, Austrian case is very, very famous as far as this economic diplomacy promotion all around. There are good voices, of course, of your ideas in the many other foreign markets. But you should be that one who teach them what is important, how they should promote the investments in that countries that they are having posts, that they are serving. If all this apparatus or all this, let's say, system works hand in hand, then the country is very successful. All chambers of commerce, chambers of industry, name it. I mean, all the institutions should work as like you all know, everyone would like to be a one-stop shop, but in reality, what means one-stop shop means that investor comes to only one place and gets everything. Be it let's say, work permits. Arranging, investor would like this. Arrange me a school for my kid when I come to your country. But then you come to this bureaucracy. So it's not your responsibility. This is the ministry. But at least you as IPA, you can mitigate this struggle and this hurdle and this burden onto the investor. Actually, I worked and I know we tried to be a one-stop shop. We really tried. Sometimes we've been successful, but many times there was this fight about being important within the same government. So our vice president, from the Aspromo agency from Azerbaijan, said once very interesting things. So you should fight and you should promote internally. It's not only investment promotion outside for the investors, but it's investment promotion of your own country, of your own institution, whatever it is. I mean, if it's IPA or its department, so that they give you the value within your own government. This would be a great wish. I put, okay, so you are involved in the preparation of new investment legislation. I don't know if you are. Can you raise the hands if you really are listened and valued about the law creation in your countries? Okay, couple of hands, so it's good. It's not that bad, obviously, because normally what we are hearing from our members is that when it comes to, let's say, more strategical decisions, so the legislation framework, then they are not listened really, in reality. So this is one of the advocacy roles as well. To be more independent, so to be more in line with a corporate culture, so the independency, I guess, you are all seeking for. When I was the, let's say, head of an IPA, I would wish I don't need to ask for, let's say, a bit more important questions to the minister. So I would wish I would get a framework in the beginning of the year. We would agree in the governmental level according to what is the vision and strategy of the state, and then we would execute. And then again some approvals are needed during the year, which just burdens you in your daily work. And then the investor waits, and you know the investors, they do not have time. The time is money for them. It's not like in a bureaucracy. So this is also what we try to advocate, to put that these backlinkages, I mean that, let's say, feedback that you are giving to your governments should be incorporated in the laws, in legislation frameworks. Service delivery metrics, we spoke much, so developing narratives for a more open and integrated world. I'm trying to put a bit bigger picture. I'm not going very much into details. I'm trying to explain time to time, but I'm trying to see IPAs as a more important. It was also the understanding of VIPA should not touch upon, let's say, world levels. These are ministries who are responsible for this. But we sincerely believe, since we represent a vast network of, let's say, more than 170 members, we should give our voice in all this international, let's say, environment, in agreements, in whatever discussions about the FDI. We should definitely put your voice into the proper ears. We spoke about this, so I will just say country brand images, investment promotion between countries and regional agencies. So we all spoke. So this is how we see IPAs. Later we will, of course, hear, I guess, some good examples from your colleagues. I would wish there would be more time to discuss more, but this is what we are trying to do in our trainings, for example. We try to put IPAs in a, let's say, first plan and try to hear from them. They are that one who matter, actually. Focused approach, reinvestment as a very important thing. We all know that it comes, almost 60% comes from the existing investments in your country. So if you caress your investors, if you are in close touch with them, if you provide good facilitation, good aftercare services, they might reinvest. Not only maybe with new investment in the same, maybe even in a different sector. They might decide they would go into the preparational, let's say, phase, so they will invest into the, let's say, semi-product production, or what you name it. So the interaction, it's very important. Recently we heard a very good example from Bosnia and Herzegovina, also in cooperation with the World Bank, how they really visited all the investors, and visiting and trying to understand what the investors want, what they would like to be changed. And then, believe me, it's maybe you can, my colleague is here, I guess, later on, maybe you can speak with her, how important is this interaction with the investors. And the World Bank supports this kind of initiatives, and we are in a very close cooperation with the World Bank trying to support this kind of ideas as well. Job creation, decreasing poverty, but especially we should focus, as I said, decent job creation. Creating sustainability in investment flows by focusing on well-being of people. So all our focus should be at the end ourselves. What do we want in the future? Do we want, let's say, the society where our children will not have a peaceful life, where there will be problem with drought, with hunger? This all comes with good investments. This will be mitigated. This risk will be mitigated. It will be better, let's say, at least opportunities to be more well-being of the people. So value addition and sophisticated investment models. So added value is what matters for the, not only for investors, but also for your communities. So sustainable economic development through sustainable FDI. So keep in touch means that we are always open to all of your suggestions, initiatives, I mean, name it. We are here, we can't, as I say, lecture to you. We want to listen to you. It's very important that you tell us what is important, and then we disseminate your challenges, your fears, your, let's say, questions to the wider community to try to put you slowly, gradually to the top point, let's say, into the stage. And now we will hear three of, let's say, IPAs. It's not that they will promote their own countries, so you should invest on it, but they will try to share how they are doing some things, what challenges they are facing. And I guess you should be very interactive, and you should even ask them directly. You should simply stop them. You didn't stop me much. I hope I was not that much boring, but in reality, what matters is now what your colleagues will show to you. And then you should also say, okay, I agree with this, I disagree, I would do it in a different manner. This is what matters, actually. Thank you very much. Now when Andrea says German is fixing the technology, then I will just announce that we will start with practitioners. You have that? So these are the guys from the field and your colleagues. So please do feel open and try to discuss as much as possible. So CPC, the first one from Côte d'Ivoire. Yes. They always say, don't say Ivory Coast.
Yes, true.
Côte d'Ivoire.
Côte d'Ivoire. Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mrs. Carole Verster. I'm working at the Center of Investment Promotion of Côte d'Ivoire, and I'm representing here my CEO, Mr. Essis Emmanuel, who couldn't, at the very last minute, he couldn't make it. So I have to present his excuses to all of you, and he asked me to join you and make the presentation. So what I'm doing today, what I was asked to do, is to share with you some best practices from CPC that we have. I will start with a presentation, a brief presentation of CPC. What is CPC, the Center of Investment Promotion in Côte d'Ivoire? Some best practices to share with you, and then a conclusion. It's going to be very quick. So the mission of CPC The mission is really to be the one-stop shop for the investment. But when we say investment here, we have to focus on private investment. CPC is purely for private investment, any kind of investment, but private. When it comes to public investment, we have another structure. We don't mix both. So the mission is to federate and coordinate and rationalize all the government initiatives and action related to investment promotion and private sector development. So the investors basically, when they come to Côte d'Ivoire, CPC is the one door, the first door where they will knock in. So, sorry?
Is it for foreign investors or
yes,
local?
Exactly, for foreign investors and national investors. Yes, both investors. For us, an investor is an investor. No matter where he's coming from, locally or foreign, it's the same. So this is the axis of intervention of CPC. We intervene on business environment. It's very, very important for us, especially in Côte d'Ivoire, where we have to improve the business environment. Saying so, I have to say something. We work closely with the National Development Plan. The National Development Plan has been designed by the government from 2016 to 2020. So this is the business plan of the government, right? And within this National Development Plan, the government expects 60% of the investment from the private sector. So it's really heavy. And within this 60%, 60, CPC has to mobilize 40%. So we have a big role in that sense. So this is why business environment is important for us, and we are the agency coordinating all the activities related to business environment, because we are the ones who have to go out and look for the investors. But what do we offer? We need to offer a very good business environment. We also have investor services. We have an investment attraction policy. As I said, because we have to mobilize 40% of the private investment in Côte d'Ivoire, we need to define investment attraction policy. Very important. So I'll maybe explain to you later what is our investment attraction policy based on the strategy and what we say targeted investors. We also plan, monitor, and evaluate studies of investment. We do a lot of communication. Andrea was talking about, communicating the result, what we're doing, the activities. 2 times a year, we have a press conference. We release all the statistics that we have. We have to tell, to communicate on the amount of investment that we mobilize, data in the countries, etc., etc. We communicate a lot. And we have documentation and information service as well. So the service offered by CPC. CPC in the region of Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, offered some service, and we have quite a few APIs coming to us also to work with us and benchmark. So we can help with the private investment promotion and attraction. That's what we do, because we assist them on, we can assist on create an investment attraction service. We say investment attraction service, not investment promotion, because we really need to attract them to come. It's very, it's a purpose word, We elaborate an investment attraction strategy based on an official document. So the National Development Plan, as I said to you, design the priority sectors that the country wants to reinforce or wants to develop. And based on that plan, CPC has designed a strategy for attraction. What do we need? Where do we go? And what type of investors we want to have. And this is in our strategy. And I can tell you that every month, every 3 months, the CEO will call for a meeting and ask where we are. Because at the end, we have to report the result, the amount. So sometimes we're a little bit behind, so we can feel the pressure. So everyone is ready with his suitcase to go out. But then it's not only going out, because we have to mobilize FDIs, but we also have to mobilize national development, national direct investment. So it's both. So we have 2 services, one for the FDIs and one from the NDIs. And we also have investment code implementation. Within the CPC, we have the investment code, which is a law from the country, which gives some, I would say, exemption taxes to the investors. So any investors will come to Côte d'Ivoire and want to invest, I'm talking about investment, would come to CPC and request for the code. Of course, there's a procedure. He will apply for that. CPC will have exactly 21 days to reply to him. If there's no reply, and I can tell you, we always reply, he's granted with the code, and then he can start his investment. The investment is giving him, as I said, exemption taxes for customs when he's in the investment phase. When he's starting operating, he's also having additional exemption with no land tax to pay exemption, for example, no building tax to pay, no benefit, no tax on the benefit. And also, these codes will apply for a certain time, 5 years when the investor is around Abidjan, 8 years when he's a little bit somewhere, 15 years when he's really in the middle of nowhere. But it's not the distance per kilometers which made a difference. It's the number of inhabitants. But in some part of the country, we are less than 60%, 60,000 inhabitants. These are the places where we have an investor coming there. He will benefit for a longer period.
Is it okay to ask or better to leave it until the end?
Sorry?
Is it okay to ask now or to leave it until the end of the meeting?
From the, what would you? Yeah, yes?
I mean, you mentioned a lot of KPIs here. I mean, you need to mobilize 60%, investment need to be
40%, not 60 even.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the national plan?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I mean, not meeting those KPIs, what will happen? I mean, how
Okay, not meeting, I don't know what will happen, but what I can share with you is that from the previous National Development Plan, from 2012, 2016, we had also an amount to a cost of investment to mobilize, and we did perform up to 80%, 80% of our objective. That was very good and well recognized from the government. So this is why they kind of even triple the amount for this one. So I cannot tell you exactly what will happen. No, not yet. No. Yes?
You did mention that CPI, your agency,
CPC
is private.
No, it's a public agency.
It's a private agency?
No, public. Okay. It's a public agency. It's a public. No, it's a real place. I'll come back. I'll come to the next slide and present a little bit how we were structured. It's a purely public agency. Okay. Business climate improvement. This is what I was telling before. Very important. We are all familiar with the Doing Business report, from the World Bank. Well, we were not very well ranked, and investors sometimes they go and refer to that report before they invest, even though it's not always the case. But still, it's a report that can be taken into account. So what we did is, from 2012, we, as CPC, we coordinate the Doing Business reform at the national level. So there's an entity at CPC who really taking care of all the reform, following the reform, and until we get the result that we want. We also assist on identifying which reform has to be done in a in a quick way. It's very important for us. We also intervene on the strategy planning, studies, and statistics. Okay? We assist some IPAs, as I said, to preparation of specific economic and statistical studies and analysis. Yes, we do that. But the most important here is that we are the ones always coming to the government with some figures, so that to show to them how important is the investment, for example, just an example, what can we do, and with this statistic, we also provide, and at least we identify some solution. That's where we can intervene. We are not decision makers, but we contribute a lot on how we can improve things. And last thing is investors' care, customer care. We also support the installation of the one-stop shop for business creation. This is what we have at CPC. We were mentioning that. But we also create and help to create, support the creation of others one-stop shop. For example, we have a one-stop shop for a building permit, for example. That's very important for investors when he comes in and he wants to build his plant. Instead of going around all the bureaucracy, procedures, and all these things, there's a one-stop shop. He has all the paper there, and then he will get his permit, building permit quickly. Because we also have the investment code, which is, as we said, an exemption of taxes benefit. We have to manage this code. We have to explain at a certain time if the code is adequate to the investors, if it's really something that they need. We know we have a very competitive code in the region, but is that the reason why we have the investors coming in? Or what should we do with the code? It's a very liberal code. Our code is very liberal, giving a lot of advantages to the investors, foreign investors and local investors, all investors again. But is the code the real reason of setting up in Côte d'Ivoire? Or can we maybe adapt the code now to a certain reality? So I have to recall something, that when President Ouattara took over in 2012, we were out of a crisis period. So because we were out of this crisis period, it was really hot in Abidjan at that time, he said to us, we have to be very liberal. We open the doors. We do not, because it's a period where we need to, as you said, to rebrand the country, to communicate, and to attract as more as we can. So the first National Development Plan, 2012-2016, was in that purpose. So the question today is 2016-2020, is that going to be the same, or shall we make some recognition, or we're still thinking. But we have this ability to do that. This is APC at our one-stop shop. We can create the company within 24 hours, and it's really true. You come in the morning, submit your papers, and in the afternoon, you get all the registration number that you need. You have the investment code service, and we said 21 days to give a reply. And digital land service, you want to set up your plan, where do you go? You come to CPC and you request for the industrial land, and you have information service. We did not reach the point where the customer will come and ask if his children can be registered in one school, but we're coming to that. We're working on that. But we give as much as support that we can. CPC. So, as we said at the very beginning, Andrea said, the economic environment is getting very, very competitive. So what do we have to do? We have to develop some capacities. And this is something to show how we were able to improve our service. We were created in 1993 by the Prime Minister, Alassane Ouattara, who is actually the president. So His Excellency Alassane Ouattara was Prime Minister, and he created, just after his appointment, he created CPC. It was very new to the country. What is CPC? What is that? But he understood very well at that time that an agency for investment promotion is very important. And he placed CPC directly to a link to the Prime Minister cabinet. 2012, he took over as the president. He said, I'm also taking CPC under my umbrella. So we moved from the Prime Minister cabinet to the President's cabinet. And yeah, since 2012, we had additional, I would say, authority, not only because we are linked to the presidency, but also because of all the specificities that we could manage to have, like coordinating the doing business reform, coordinating the investment code, and all these specific things that we can have. And improvement of the business environment. Yes, this is what we did. And since 2012, 57 reforms have been implemented. It's all within CPC, and when I say work within CPC, it has been worked in CPC. It was a hard time because we have to follow all the administrations. It's not always nice because, you know, we were seen like policemen, or can you imagine all the administrative structure looking at us like, who are you? Who do you think you are? But, you know, we have an objective. We have to follow them. We have to impulse the change. So this is what we did. And as again, business creation, granting of tax facilitation. It was not that easy, the business creation one, because it's basically taking from all the others, the public structure, taking something from them and put them in one place. At the beginning, it was not easy because people were a little bit reluctant, but again, that's the nice thing to be linked to the cabinet of the president. You have this support, and relatively, you know, you can realize your objective. We also worked on different other specificities, like setting up a commercial court and setting up the one-stop shop, as I said, for the permits, building permits. And on a very short-term perspective, we're working on something. We're working on dematerialization of procedures for issuing administrative act. This is very important. It's all conducted by CPC. Dematerialization is not only asked from the doing business report, but it's also for us to improve the environment, the climate of the business climate. Very important. If you have an investors coming to Côte d'Ivoire and be able to have this, you know, go online and do everything, you kind of be sure that you can attract him.
Sorry, quick question.
Yes.
On the commercial court and all these parts, so the mandate is broader than what an IPA has. So are you talking about getting into the legislation and the regulatory aspect?
No, we were not getting into the regulation, but what we did, we coordinated all the activities, the process to lead to that, to have this commercial court created. You know, that's what we did. But this is also part of the doing business report. Huh? Sure. So we said we want to really clean that area and put in place the commercial record. It has been done also with the support of the World Bank.
She's more of a facilitator.
Yes, yes. But we are the one, you know, coordinating and reporting where we are. Like, for example, if the cabinet of the president will ask, where are we with the commercial code? CPC will have to come and say, okay, this is what we've done, etc., etc. Okay? So this is what we...
So if
yes?
you want to build something, will I come over to you as opposed to go to the regional authorities?
Sorry, I didn't understand.
If I want to build something, so do I come over to you instead of going to the city hall? Or
if you want to build something,
yeah.
If you want to build something, you will request. You will need two things. You will need the land. For the land, you come to CPC. CPC will make everything possible to give you the land that you will need because it's in. I believe it's going to be in the industry. But then comes the construction part. for the building permit, there's a one-stop shop where you have to go. Okay? What CPC did is CPC support the implementation of this one-stop shop of the building permit. That's what we did. Okay? So the result obtained, we gained 35 places into the doing business ranking. We gained 24 places within the competitivity ranking of World Economic Forum. We also gained some places within the Transparency International ranking of 2015. The United Nations Security Index went down from 4 because, as I said, we were in the middle of the crisis. And now we are at 1, like New York, for example. So you see that you are very safe when you come to Côte d'Ivoire. And we also have a very good financial rating from Moody's and Fitch. So all these results contribute to the attractiveness of the destination Côte d'Ivoire. Another thing that we went into, because we understood, and I said, investors are investors, and we are also in charge of the national investors. We understood something is that the startups are very important, because as Andrea said, no matter the investors come in your country, the level of unemployment will not go down that easily and that quickly, so you need to do something. Startup competition 2014 that we launched, and we got 10 winners. You know, at that time we had a little, the budget was not that high, but we got 10 winners. And what did we do with the 10 winners? We worked with them. They created a company with CPC. We helped them. Basically, we support them to go through the process. They also went into commercial activity, and you know, a lot of, and you look at the turnover, an increase of 133%, and they even create jobs. It's not that much, but you know, from 10 to 144, it's not bad. So just to say that because we did that, can you imagine how the country they were all surprised and look at it and say, oh, really? The startups are becoming very, very well known, and we were taking them all the time when we were out with them. We go, we present them, we really work with them. And now, this is some product that the startup had done. They were very innovative. The one from Brava Africa, he has an automatic dispenser for cellular unit. Very good for the hotels, the offices. You have a station, energy sale of solar. You know, product agribusiness. We have some local product transformations. Very good. So that's something we supported, and also we got some recognition from the government, and we also have different investors, different big companies who want to work with us, like Total. But because we went in and we saw the importance and the needs, CPC wants to go into an incubator creation. So this is the short-term objective. And we want also to relaunch the edition 2015 with the Startup Forum. Okay. Study and monitoring evaluation of private investment. The question raised one time is to say, at the government level, is, so CPC, you're coming with all this investment, the investors are in, but what do they do, and what are the future for them? We don't see them anymore. We don't even know what happened to them. What can we do? So CPC has designed evaluation process, which is the CSEP in French. So it is basically a committee that CPC has designed the TOR, the term of reference for the government, to say, okay, with this mechanism, we will be able to ensure the aftercare of the investors. We want to follow them. We want to know what they become, what they are doing. So this is a committee that we facilitated, and we came up with the TOR. So monitoring and evaluation system is essential for us to measure the socio-economic and environmental impact on private investment recorded by the IPA. Why CPC was involved in that? Because CPC is the place where the investors is getting the investment code. It's basically exemptions, right? It's money that the government is giving to the investors. So because of this financial aspect, they need to know if these exemptions are worth or not. So we need to explain to them, yes, it is, or no, it isn't. Okay? How do we do that? We have to put in place this committee. Okay? So if the exemptions are very worth and it's something that we need and we need to continue, CPC would have to make the recommendation. Okay? So again, as I said, it was to ensure the traceability of approved investments and company created. Okay, quickly in conclusion. As Andrea said, I was really happy when with your presentation, Andrea. The new trend of the global investment is, changing. It's completely, that's not something that we expected before. So because of that, investment promotion agency, they need to increase the role. We need to catch up. We need to think out of the box. It's true. The primary role is attract investors, true. But how would you attract investors if you do not have any tools to sell? If you go as a marketer and you say, okay, you come to my country, but but what is important in your country? Well, we are first producer of cocoa, we are first producer of that. Okay, you can have your own, but the investors most of the time they know the country more than yourself. So this is something also we are. So you can't go to them and tell them things that are not true. They know. So we have to be a bit innovative. It's not easy because we remain public agency. It's like taking things from other public agency. They will be fighting for that. So you have to find a way to, put yourself in a role that you become not continuable. You have to be there. So because of that, it's very important to think strategy and to think planning. We also noticed a weak operational capabilities of many IPAs, especially in the developing country, especially in Africa. Okay? It's not, it's not only financing which is the issue. It's true. I believe for all IPA, the financing, funding is important. But operational capabilities as well are very important. So we need to think about that. We are convinced that the IPA cannot evolve on its own or self-contained. We need partnership. We need to partner with others. And CPC, what we're doing is not only going around and attract investors, but we are really looking into partnership with other structures. Partnership between the IPAs, partnership between with the others entities dealing with promotion. For example, I give you quickly an example. If we want to go into a country for promotion activity, we can't go alone. We will connect with the IPA of this country, just to be sure that we'll be assisted with them by them and we'll get something from them. Just to and let them know that we are here also. Maybe together we can do things together. So we need to partner with all the structure. So the conclusion is that by improving and modernizing our FDI attraction tool through concerted solution and from successful experience and model, the IPAs can contribute fully to create wealth reducing inequalities and poverty in our respective country. Thank you, everybody. Questions? Because, yes?
I have a small question.
Yeah?
My question is concerning the country and political risk.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll refer to Andreas' word in the beginning of his presentation, during the presentation, when he said it's all about the perception of
Yes.
the investor more than what actually is
Yeah.
happening on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So, as you know, the perception towards the African countries
Yes.
are the political that the country is.
Yes.
How does the agency, the Côte d'Ivoire agency, deal with such perception when promoting for foreign investors to come and invest in the country?
Yes, it was a bit the question that Andreas also replied later. It's true, when the president took over in 2012, I cannot even describe you how the country was. You know, we were out of war. You know, the crisis was so deep. The country itself was completely, there were no structure. We were, you know, the stigmat of the war were even in each of us. But rebranding, going out, and thinking nationally about what we have to offer is very important. And this is why we came in. How we came in, we said, okay, we sit together and said, what do we have and what we have to offer? And for the first National Development Plan, we had not this luxury to say, we want this, we do not want that, we do not know. We said, we need to open the doors as large as possible. We need to have everybody coming in. We need to rebrand, we need to be very communicative. And CPC at that time was very, very, very communicative. I know Boshan was another CEO very well. No one day in Côte d'Ivoire. He was out, out, out. Press conference in national level, press conference outside, it's out, out, out to tell, we are back, we are back. And we even had a communication that Côte d'Ivoire is back. Now, you know, everybody knows, and we also got good results. But the moment we were out, attracting people inside, at the level country, they were working on how they could clean everything so that the investor will come. So it was at both levels. No matter if you're out, but your country is still a mess, you need to work hand by hand. I say, okay, you guys, what are you doing there? Is this local? Did they adapt the law? Do they do that? And it was going in the same direction. Okay. But then now, 2012, 2020, we got the new National Development Plan. And now we said, okay, we know what we want now because we have a precise objective and we know who to go and attract. And it doesn't mean that we want the big birds, no. The smalls are sometimes easy to have also, easy to attract because of the decision line is not that big, it's not that long, but having a diversity of investors is very important for a country. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah. I don't, okay.
What you should know about me
I'm,
is... Yeah?
I'm
Okay.
going to disturb you.
Okay. This is a very difficult thing to wear, isn't it?
Just wear it here.
No, no, no. Как я тут сделать-то, господи? Okay. A Spider-Man. Okay. Spy system? Yeah? Okay. Right. So my name is Tali, and I am just the person that was mentioned in the morning. I'm the bureaucrat because I am a government member and I'm a minister of investment in Tatarstan Republic. Tatarstan Republic is one of the Russian regions. I'm working in government system in civil service for 10 years already. So I've got a pretty good experience in government relations. But I do not have any experience in businesses. Although I try, and I will try today, to give some cookies for IPAs. And I want to be really very, very practical to show you our experience and to tell you what we have done. In fact, for you to be able to implement or to adapt our experience, okay? So, if you don't know where Tatarstan is a republic that is over here. Kazan is the capital of Tatarstan Republic. Tatarstan has 4 million people. Kazan is the capital of Tatarstan Republic. Here is Moscow. Here is the Kazan, where I came from. This is my native city, very beautiful one. And now please raise your hands to the ones who has never been to Tatarstan. Oh my God. Congratulations, because you have a great opportunity to get lots of impressions and lots of very, very positive emotions and lots of new knowledge that might be useful for you in terms of business and culture and history, because this is a very beautiful and historical place. With UNESCO objects and national culture and many other things, because Tatarstan has its own state language, not only Russian, because we are a part of Russia, but also Tatar language that is similar to Turkish, and 50% of our populations are Muslims, and 50 are Christians, all right? Okay. All right. So the agency that I'm a head of, as I told you, is a part of government. So I am a minister, the youngest one in our cabinet, and we are also a one-stop center. The investor comes to the agency, and then we can help him with all other ministries, with our municipalities, with land questions, to find him potential partners either in the whole country or in Tatarstan inside, to come up with the industrial park that would be suitable for him and for his needs, to help him with labor market and so on. So I don't want to go into tax preferences and all things that we all have, because this is not interesting anymore, right? Now, Russia has 85 regions, big territories: Moscow, St. Petersburg, Tatarstan, and many others. So Russia has its federal ranking on investment climate. Federal ranking is a very difficult system. It has 50 indicators. Each indicator has about 15 elements inside. So Tatarstan in this ranking today is #1 for the second year in 2015 and in 2016. For the last 2 years, Tatarstan is #1 on investment climate in Russia. That means that our region is the best for investment in the whole country in Russia, right? Yeah, and this is, thank you. And this was, it's not just occasionally, has been done so far. This ranking system, as I told you, already exists for 2 years. And what is interesting about it, it helps to compete, so it like motivates the regions to compete, because the Putin, who is the president of Russia, announced on the big forum, and everyone knows that your region is number, I don't know, 80 something, for example, or your region is #1. So it's very important for the governors of those regions to be #1. And to be #1, they should understand what it consists of. Small and medium businesses support, tax preferences, industrial parks, how we work with investors, lots of things. And this is a very good idea for the ones who are ruling the country agencies, to do the same ranking for people in municipalities, because sometimes municipalities who also attract investment, they do not understand how to make the climate better. So if you go through this ranking system, you would understand what it consists of, and this could be a plan of actions what you should do to become better in investment policies. And this is also very important. This ranking is done by Agency of Strategic Initiatives. This is a federal Russian agency, Agency of Strategic Initiatives. Right. So what do we do practically? Of course, we have lots of exhibitions all around the world. We've got about 30 exhibitions per year abroad, and about 20-25 inside Tatarstan. That we build the booths like this, and we try to promote, and we try to attract as many people as we can. But what our last initiative was to do the style of our region like this with the white and green, and because these are the colors of our flag, of our national flag. So what we did is we went with a document that we have this style of things, and we tried to push our large-scale enterprises to do the same things. So when they promote themselves, the big-scale, the large-scale enterprises, when they promote themselves abroad, they also put our brand Invest in Tatarstan everywhere. And this is done in Chinese language. We also try to adapt our booths to the local things. So we have the booth over here as well. So we try to promote the brand Invest in Tatarstan everywhere where we can. Now, we mentioned the Facebook in the morning. I think that social nets are the main sales channel today. People always are in the nets. I can see, even for now, this guy over there, this guy over here, this guy over there are doing something with their phones, right? Lots of people are in the nets all the time. Use this channel as a very good thing to promote your regions, your countries. What we are doing now, we have the pages on Facebook, in Twitter, in Instagram, and on YouTube. We have our own channel. And if you would go over there, you can follow us, how we move all around the world, what do we do. And all our investors, all our partners, they are doing that. They are following us. And this is a very great thing, how you can promote and free of charge, by the way. And I will never, ever participate in such amount on conferences and forums as the internet will do for me, right?
But we should say that no one can follow you, since you are in every possible event. Check your Twitter, you will see.
You just can follow us on this, and then you can create your own pages if you don't have them for now. And this is a very good channel. This is what we would suggest to do. About web pages, also you mentioned the web page today. What we created, the investment portal, Invest in Tatarstan, this is the brand actually, invest.tatarstan.ru. This is an investment portal that was created I think I was pregnant for about 10 months trying to give a birth to this investment portal, because for 10 months we were sitting with our psychologist to understand how they would click, what colors we should choose, and how we should find what information would be the priority for investors. What should be there, what should not be there, because if you put everything inside, it will be too heavy, and it will not be easy to access from mobiles or like that. So that's why it was a very difficult job, but we managed to do it, and now it works. You can check it. And over here there is an you can switch it into 11 different languages of the world, and this covers 2/3 of the planet and the richest countries of the world. So this is a very, very good thing to do. This was done with our analytical department. I've got a huge analytical department who analyzes what languages are in use. And for now, I would say that the most popular things that are used here are, number one is success stories of our investors. People always look for success stories of others. So that's why we moved it from the very, very, from the very deep to up. And then second thing that is also very popular are booklets. I don't know why. They download the presentations. I don't know why. The PDF presentations, they download it with figures. Maybe they want to print it out to show to their bosses. I don't know what's going on there. But I can tell you, but for now, this site exists for a year already, and we have 130 countries who are visitors of this website. So we are trying constantly to improve this website. Now what we are doing is we are trying to find, because what we've done so far, we sent this link to all the trading representations of Russia abroad, to all the ambassadors of Russia abroad, for them to be able to spread it over to all chambers of commerce. So we are trying to use all the free channels to promote it, because it's just easier. If you would see my business card over here, and every single person in my agency has the same. If you turn it around, you would see the investment portal over here. You see, this is the way how we do it free of charge. Now we try to do it also by another expensive way, to find companies in other countries which are our priorities, because Tatarstan has its own strategy. We have the strategy of Tatarstan Republic up to 2030 as a region, and we also have an investment strategy that was developed by our agency. Also, this like based on that strategy, right? An investment strategy. So, and it has the countries that would probably invest easier to Tatarstan than others. So what we are now trying to do is to find the local IT companies in those countries that we try to get investment from, to get a contract with them, for them to do the IT job, you know, when you Google it, like invest in Russia, in China, let's say, in Chinese language. If you Google, it, like, not Google, but they have their own systems, websites. Yes, yeah. If they Google, if they put it there, invest in Russia, I want my page to be first, this one, right? So this is a special program, but it's also costs a lot, I would say. But I have a budget for that, so I'm looking now for the companies. If you have such companies, we are ready to cooperate. Please let us know. Right, next. This is my building where I sit down. This is my office in Tatarstan, and you can see it over here. And this building is just on the highway between the airport and the center of the city. What does that mean? That every person who comes to Tatarstan Republic can see my office, and he can still understand that investing is the priority for our region. This is also a great channel of promotion, because many people start traveling all around the world. Businesses are traveling all around the world with their countries, and this is how they know the territories, and only after that they invest. Sometimes it happens. So we try to do that. And inside, oh sorry, something happened. Inside the building, we built the very big showroom for our investors, so that when they come, sometimes very rich people, they come only for several hours, like for 4 hours on their private planes, for 4 hours or for 5 hours, and you don't have enough time to show them all your special economic zones and everything. They only have the meeting with our president of Tatarstan Republic, for example, and only have 1 hour to discuss what is what. And this is how it goes. This is the very good showroom that has lots of presentations that are very specifically organized in construction area, in medical area, depending what investor is interested in and what are we interested in according to this strategy, the investment strategy that we do have. So this is also a good thing that you can do. Then we organized a 5D cinema inside the showroom thing. And this was also a very creative idea that came into my mind when I was in Disneyland. I thought, like, I was on some very nice attractions, and I thought, why couldn't we do that about Tatarstan Republic? And we did. I hired a special design company, and they did lots of interesting they did lots of videos of Tatarstan Republic, especially inside enterprises, inside special economic zones, so that you can find yourself inside the big, huge enterprises that produces, let's say, trucks, and you can be an evidence of how it's going on. It's just in front. You can be a visitor of those enterprises, of those special economic zones, with the help of these technologies. This is how IT went to our life, so why shouldn't we use it, right? This is also a very nice thing, and all investors, they like it really very much, to be honest. The other thing that we organized, instead of doing a special tea room to just to be friendly and hospitable enough for our investors, we organized a tea room in the shape of a small wood house that is very national. This is a Tatarstan national lady with the national pies and the national things all around here. So we've done even the video over here. There are screens. It's not the window. It's a fake window. It's screen over there So we organized a special video designing so that you can see what's going on inside their yard, how they live. It's a national thing, so that they are like, they know, they understand your culture, and so that it's like we are open to you. This is our culture. We are hospitable enough. Please come to us, invest, and we will also respect your culture. This is how we work. Then, aftercare services. This is the Investors Club meeting. So what do we do in terms of aftercare services? Of course, we do have a high-level meetings like this. Here I am, and here is the president of Tatarstan Republic sitting here. This is the round table of the biggest investors of Tatarstan Republic who invested a lot, so that they can answer questions, so that they can feel that he is also supporting them, and that we are ready to find a solution of any problem that they might face with. This is how it works. But except for this, what we are trying to do is a community, so that they make friends with each other, so that they can go for new projects together, to do something really very, very new. That's why we try to organize for them sport events like golf or something like this, hockey, football, anything. Then we've got the newsletter, so that we send them what's going on. If it's a new legislation comes out, or if something new is going on, you can send them the things to understand how it works, for example. Then we organize for them the training courses. Like last time we invited the Brian Tracy. You know Brian Tracy? He's one of the best in the world, really, in sales management. So we invited him. We paid for him for his visit. We paid him for the lecture. But we think that this is a good thing to do, because people feel that they are a part of a big team. Investors team of Tatarstan Republic. Then we also have the legislation discussions, and because I'm a member of government, I can go to parliament and we can initiate some legislative things, and we do it also with the helps based on their opinion, because sometimes the mistakes in legislation, they only can come up from investors. You will never understand because you don't work in this field. If they work, they know. That's why we ask them. And of course the reinvestment stimulation. So it's all about reinvestment stimulation. It's all what we are trying to do. So the last initiatives that we and now that we came from were these ones. I am a chairman of the board of several companies. One of them is Corporation of Export, that helps our investors to export their products abroad to the countries that are around us, to CIS countries mainly, and to other Russian regions also. And this connection is also is a specific thing for Tatarstan Republic. I know that not all of you are doing these things, help them to export, but we are doing that. Also, we launched a new company where I'm also a chairman of the board. It 100% belongs to government. It's called Projects of Tatarstan, and it was created in terms of helping the investors to do the very, very specific analysis. Because my agency is limited in people, we cannot do all the analysis for all people. So that's why we created a special company to do it. And sometimes they are asking for very specific things. So this is how it was. And then this company is also responsible for PPP projects development. Because to do the public-private partnership projects, you have to understand the needs of your country, the needs of your region, the strategy that you have. You need to understand how can investor benefit from this project as well, because we have to think like investors ourselves to understand what might be his benefits. And then it goes around, and then you have a PPP project with the financial models. The problem is that PPP projects are usually infrastructural projects or are very big, and it's long money. It's like the payback period is too big. So not everyone is able to go to the project like that. That's why we have the projects designing at the moment. What we are doing is we design the projects for funds. For lots of money in the world are in funds. But the problem is that we cannot adapt our documents to their requirements. So I have now a special team that works on adapting our projects to the requirements of those funds. Otherwise, we cannot get the funding because the rates in Russia are just awful. Sorry for saying that. Is there a question?
Yes, I have. You mentioned you are the minister and you are the chairman of few companies.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, very open question here because we have a problem in the region. Normally, bureaucrat, I mean, how you are finding the time to do all these strategic things? You know, it's very important. And what's the role, for example, is it state-owned enterprises?
Yes, all of them are state-owned because if they were private, I would not have a chance to be a chairman of the board because the corruption process is on them. Yeah. So I don't take money from those companies anyhow. I only have KPIs for the general directors of those companies. They have to follow the KPIs and then they get the salaries, so they are motivated. And it's also very important that your teams are motivated enough because I organize lots of trainings for our teams. Like every single Friday they have the trainings on sales, on negotiations, and it's very important how they communicate with people. And it's about planning, time planning. You have to focus on the strategies. And it's also about how you are involved yourself into your job, because I married my job. I don't have a family because of this job. If I want to have a family, I should quit because this is a mess. That's what I'm telling you. This is the black side of my job. But usually people don't like to say bad things about the jobs, right? They try to be to be open and to say that they love their job. And I love my job, really. I do that because this is my native town, so I like my job. That's why I'm doing it. In a day that I will not be interested in that, I will quit. Because I have enough experience and international education and everything. So I will not do that anymore. While I'm interested, I'll do that. And you have to motivate, you have to find such people like me and train them and give them opportunities to grow. This is how it works. And then everyone is talking about startups and SMEs. So what we are now doing, we are trying to create the very friendly environment internationally for international SMEs, because we already have lots of governmental programs, local governmental programs for internal SMEs, for our local SMEs, for startups development, grants, lots of competitions for grants and many other things that are really interesting. Last initiative we've done was with Sberbank. Sberbank is one of the biggest banks in Russia. And Google company, you know all Google. So Sberbank and Google, they financed a special project. This is a website e-learning of how to do startups. And it has an extremely great interest. It made a great interest in our region. And now they try to do it in all Russian regions. Because now there is a boom of startups. Everyone is trying to do businesses. So we also try to create the small and medium enterprises friendly environment. We also have international schools for investors, and we also deal with the wives somehow, because we are trying to be friendly enough. They have the manager of their projects that is responsible for everything that happens with that investor. He will not write a letter like, my wife needs to get tickets to the tonight's theater or something else, but he will call. And it depends on how you work and what are the level of your relations with investors. And for in terms of SMEs, what we already done so far, just last year, we had new investor from Dubai. By the way, the company that opened an offices and new services for investors, and this is also a very important thing. They opened new services. What is the service? The service is, it's not just the building for renting. It's you can rent not only an office, but also computer, a table, and what is moreover more important is that you can rent a staff who speaks your language. You can like rent a secretary, you can rent some, so it's like consultancy together with real estate. And this worked really very well because they have the nets all around the world, and what we are trying to do is to create the services like that in Russia, in Tatarstan for now. I think I am tired of myself already. Thank you.
I would like to thank you for sharing with us your creative ideas that you applied in that. My question for you is, since when have you started implementing such ideas for promoting investment for Tatarstan? And since then till now, what's the growth of the FDI inflow? I would like to see the link between the initiatives and the activities you've done and the actual results concerning the inflow.
The year when it was created, the agency that is called Tatarstan Investment Development Agency was created in 2011. Now it's 2017, right? 17, I don't know. The thing is that you cannot, this was the 5 times growth. That was the year of 5 times growth when it was created. But it's also connected not only with the efficiency of TIDA. I'm here for 3 years only. It's not only connected with TIDA efficiency, and since then it's growing every year. Every year it's growing, but not in 5 times. But you should also understand that this is not a direct connection only to this, because this is a huge system. This is a system of how, when I for example, come to the investor, when I come with the investor to special economic zone, it's up to them to be as much quick as they can, as much efficient as they can. Because if I come and I can invite lots of people, I can entertain them, I can explain them, I can do everything. But when it comes to the real implementation of the project, if they are not on, if they do something wrong, he will say, no, thank you, bye. That's all. And I will lose him forever. And this is very important, why aftercare services is important, because actually the biggest value that we do have is in opinion of those people who invested. This is what values, really, because they share it with their partners, with their colleagues, with their relatives all around the world. And we cannot do anything about it. And what they will share with, what information they will go over there, you only can know after. Also, this increasement is connected to the international events, because Tatarstan is very famous in Russia for international sport events. We hosted Olympic Games for Young People Universiade in 2013. In 2015, we had an aquatic championship, FINA championship, also the world event. In 2018, we're going to have the football cup. You know about that already, I think, that Russia hosted. And Kazan will be one of the cities as well. And these events, they also have the very, very good base for us to work for, because we understand that we will have lots of people. And this is how I tease actually investors sometimes. I say, oh, you know, we're going to have, the World Skills Championship that's going to be here in Dubai in 2017, this year, the World Skills Championship with 72 countries. Kazan won the right to host it in Russia in 2019. So almost every year we've got international events, and they also attract lots of investors to come, because they know the inflow will be of people coming will be big. And this how we also manage to do lots of infrastructural projects, road projects and services projects, hospitality projects, hotels and things like that. Welcome. All right, now Tatarstan is waiting for all of you. If you are ready to come, yes, for you as well. If you are ready to come, please let us know. This is the email address where you can drop your email to say, listen, Talia, I want to come to Tatarstan. And we try to do the program for you. We try to be as friendly as we can. We try to share our experience. And we also would like to hear your opinions and your experience, so that we also can adapt something new for us. Thank you very much.
Last but not the least, colleague from Italy, Gianpaolo, right? So share ITA's experience.
Thank you.
No. All right. I'm in the position of being the last obstacle between you and your lunch, so I'll be very quick. I'm trying to be very quick and synthetic. Thank you very much to WIPA for giving us this opportunity to sharing some practices. So we don't have best practices. Well, you have to judge if they are best or worse. It's basically these are practices deriving from re-engineering of our policies and procedures to attract foreign direct investment into Italy. Basically, we have a relatively bad track record in attracting foreign direct investment compared to other European countries. According to UNCTAD data, the stock of foreign direct investment we attract is only equal to 15% of GDP, while on average we have 25% of GDP. We have UK, which is the top, around 52% of GDP. So we have to get moving and trying to have the best use of existing also structures, and that's what we did. Instead of creating a new agency in charge of attracting foreign direct investment, we use the tools that we already have. Particularly, we are AITA, the Italian trade agency, entrusted with the role of helping Italian companies in finding business counterparts all over the world. Basically, our DNA is trade promotion. So we had to change our DNA in order to encapsulate also the FDI promotion attraction. And so what we did, and by the way, I'm the trade commissioner, but on the ground we use some financial experts, and our financial expert is Fabrizio Lavezzari, is the director of the FDI desk. So we hired professionals all over the world in order to help us out to change this DNA from a trade perspective to an FDI perspective. So basically what we did, I mean, these are the major stakeholders in this new FDI attraction framework. We have a committee that basically regroups all the stakeholders at the public, mostly at the public levels, all the ministries, the regions involved, and everybody. And basically, it is in charge of policy formulation and giving directions in terms of priorities in sectors, countries to tap into, and so on and so forth. Then we are here at the center with we created an FDI department that is in close relation with Invitalia. Invitalia is the traditional investment attraction agency, but they only fund projects. They do not have a promotional arm, let's say. That's why they use us, because we have a foreign network. And in order to streamline procedures between the demand coming from the need to finance some projects, whether they be greenfield projects or an M&A, and the supply coming from foreign capital, investment agencies, private investment companies, and so on and so forth, we had to create this relationship between us, which are present on foreign markets, and the Invitalia that knows the localization opportunities in the country. And we also liaise with CDP, which is the investment banking company, private entity as well. What we did, we basically we create this FDI coordination department that has 3 divisions or 3 task teams, mostly because there are not quite, I mean, they work together. It's a task and they are teams working together. Basically, we have a branch doing FDI promotion, so promotional activities, country presentations, road shows, and so on and so forth, in order to present Italy's opportunities for foreign direct investments all over the world. Basically, we are the challenge we have to debunk the usual perception of Italy, which only produces fashion and food and so on and so forth. We also busy trying to giving the audience and the investors another perception of opportunities into Italy, into the Italian economy. Then there is a division called Partnership Division, and they deal mainly with regions, association of entrepreneurs, in order to create a portfolio of feasible projects to present to foreign investors, the teasers, let's call them teasers, and we have a constant and systematic flow of these teasers that Fabrizio receives from this division, and he is busy in presenting to the local investors in order to see if they're interested in investing in those kind of initiatives. And then we have the FDI support, which is the investors care division, which is ex-ante care, because we need a lot of ex-ante care, because Italy is characterized by a rather complex labor law and tax law, so we have to accompany them in order to let them understand how to deal with these sometimes complex issues of taxation, labor relations, and so on and so forth. And then there is of course the ex-post care, the aftercare. The department works in close cooperation with the Ministry of Economic Development and the Coordination Committee in order to acquire inputs in terms of priorities, projects, and so on and so forth. But then the real innovation is this, that the FDI coordination uses a set of FDI desks we have created in our network abroad. These are this 1 year, basically 1.5 years we are working on this project. We have created 6 at the moment, 7 desks in our offices all around the world. 2 are upcoming, Beijing and Hong Kong. And these desks, Fabrizio, they are the real sensors on foreign markets, on investors' attitude towards opportunities into Italy, and they have to tap into the market in order to find out if there are investors available to come to Italy and invest in opportunities. How they do? They do with some tools, of course, which are rather common: market intelligence, analyzing the market, segmenting the capital channels. For instance, here in the UAE, you have to distinguish between venture capitalists and private equity firms and family offices, which is a distinguished feature of this. So you have to really understand who is your counterpart and what kind of promotional tools to use in order to tap into that kind of counterpart. That's, of course, scouting of Italian investment opportunities, and lead generation and networking. That's what Fabrizio does every day in order to identify interest, proactively reaching out to private investors, banks, institutions, associations. He has a full-fledged agenda all the week. He has to meet, he has some KPIs to deliver. He has to meet so many counterparts in order to reach his targets, basically. He support the entry and establishment of foreign investment projects by providing information and assistance. And of course, we do a lot of promotion, communication, and marketing of working on the perception of the country as a place to invest, which is a key issue. Please go ahead.
How is the budget for these offices in the markets spread? Is it according to the size of the market? I mean, promotional budget.
Is according to the size of the market, yes. Overall, I would say we are investment. Aside from paying the experts, which is cost, because they are consultants. Sorry to. We are talking about 3 million euros on average per year at the moment, which is not a lot. Only for promotional activities. No, the consultant is on the top of that. Is on the top of that. They get paid according to the market average.
Pretty good amount, actually. Pretty good amount.
Yeah, well.
Million and a half per year.
We hope to have some results out of that. Okay, so I won't go into details. The FDI desk perform systematic market analysis, analyzing the investment climate here, the financial scenario, the FDI trends, sector of main interest, and so on and so forth. And he builds up a database. That's one of our assets. Basically, we have a database of all the investors in the country, so we can directly liaise with them, investment banks, institutional and sovereign funds, private equities, and so on and so forth. While in Italy, there's also the counterpart that also tap into the Italian market, analyzing all the trends and so on and so forth in order to come up with feasible opportunities to be funded hopefully by foreign investors. This is the scouting lead generation activity, which is of course based on the analysis of local demand, the structuring of portfolios, and trying to match demand and offer. It is this business is quite different from a trade business because it requires time, it requires other attitude. You have to be very patient. You have to go once and twice and 3 times to your investor in order to come. 7 times. Indeed. So and that's what he does, and so strengthen personal network. Here personal network is very important for this market and in general for this kind of business. Reaching out to leads until either become investments or do not materialize, because this is the outcome. So it is mainly a relationship building activity. And it also develops collaboration and communication with strategic counterparts and stakeholders. In Italy, they have to identify investment opportunities to be to present to our desks in order to offer to foreign investors, enacting visibility and access to information on available assets. Particularly recently, we have launched an initiative on real estate opportunities in Italy. We have developed a website with all the opportunities for these beautiful buildings available for foreign investment. Of course, it's some of them, most of them are productive buildings, so it's not not a dead-end activity. So we also would like to promote that kind of sectors. Support and follow up. We have to keep constantly inform here the market about the Italian political situation, which is one of the key elements an investor has to assess before getting into an investment relationship, business climate reform, and so on and so forth. And we have to promote a perception of Italy as an investment destination, as I said before, moving from the perception of traditional goods producer to even advanced sector, dynamic advanced sector incubator. While also in Italy there is an activity of information, coordination with national local institutions, introduction of investors to public and private counterparts, arranging and participating to visit a meeting with foreign investors, and so on and so forth, with and also follow up to operational foreign investors, working with them to support the fact that they have to stay in Italy and possibly keep on investing in the country. So we also organize promotional events. We have a website, investinitaly.com, where we put all the legislation in place in order to get investors acquainted with the tax legislation and the incentives available for foreign investors. These are some examples of deals that we actually mediate in order to that were fulfilled actually. Well, mostly Americans at this stage. We are working on these other deals. These are major deal, but we also deal with the small, medium-sized companies being in our DNA. The fact that we have to help small, medium-sized companies in finding the capital to be able to grow. We also present to the foreign investors all the set of incentives available for enterprises, mostly available to fund investment in capital goods, and in particular areas of the country where there are special incentives to localize. Particularly at the moment we are busy promoting this Industry 4.0 national plan that envisages the digitalization, the promotion of digitalization of all the manufacturing companies, and this entails the availability of hyper depreciation program, tax credit for research and development, and of course there is a bunch of products and programs aimed at supporting venture capitals and startup development. Thank you very much for your attention and patience. Thank you. If you have any question, I know that it's kind of late, but please.
People are interested, no problem. I have a quick question. You mentioned the embassy there aside of but you didn't talk about it. So what's the relation between embassies and your body and Ministry of Foreign Affairs? Because it seems to me this is one of the challenging.
It is a challenge, no? Where the embassy, well, they, of course, yes, no, I didn't mention them, but they work with the FDI, that we work in close cooperation, because basically abroad, the Trade Commission is part of the consular and embassy community, so we talk to them, and they passed on to us the information in order to be utilized in the work, the day-to-day job of Fabrizio.
So the relation with Italian embassies, not foreign embassies,
No, Italian embassies, Italian. Yes, yes.
When you talk about the FDI desk, are they privately owned or?
No, they are
fully funded by the government.
fully funded by the government,
A
yes.
question on those, because I know
Yeah.
how challenging it is to change the DNA from trade to investment.
Yeah.
It really doesn't work if you have the same people doing both.
Yeah.
In fact.
Do the desks do exclusively FDI? Or
Yes, exclusively
100%?
FDI.
And are these people that you've hired new people or consultants?
New people. Fabrizio, would you like to introduce yourself?
You're doing only FDI, no trade.
Yeah, absolutely. I work in finance or finance-related roles for 4 years, and there are people like me, not exactly the same.
So you haven't taken trade people and said you're
No, it's too challenging.
Because I worked for the foreign direct investment unit before coming here and Mr. Bruno. And so in the beginning, the same people that worked for commercial fairs and so on,
were involved, but it didn't work.
in the organization and the building up of the offices. But abroad were chosen as experts because yes, we can understand something more about foreign direct investment, but it's a different task, and above all, if we have to do a due diligence, we need different knowledge, skills.
It's a long hiring process, though. I mean, we spent, I guess, 4 or 5 months before selecting.
If we forget about HR and differences in the promotion, trade and investment, how did the joining of trade and investment work actually?
Yeah, those are
that
two different cultures. Yeah, we are trying to amalgamate. It's not easy. You pinpoint a potential critical issue. Yes, but it is also cross-fertilization in a way. So we are also learning a lot. I'm personally learning a lot from Fabrizio. I mean, he has 25 years experience in finance. I only did trade for all my life. So it's a good mixture.
Did it take to make pure cooperation among these different people, let's say? I mean, because
we are still in the process. It's a working process, because it's still the first one was in Istanbul, December 2015. So they are still. We are also facilitating them to meet frequently. For instance, recently they went to MIPIM in Cannes in order to, and they have the opportunity to meet, to talk about, to exchange, and they also do a lot of Skype calls in order to know each other and to exchange the different experience in different markets.
And if I can add, just for example, it's our experience in promotional activities helps us in promotion better the activity of foreign direct investment. This is for sure.
It is self-sustaining.
Yes. For example, MIPIM was introduced in our promotional activities to promote this investment, the investment in real estate opportunities. And starting from MIPIM, then now we have a lot of promotional activities for foreign direct investment.
Yes, please.
Who are top investors in Italy? Who are top investors?
Top investors, the US.
USA?
US, the
Because
US.
of your FDI desks in the world, are they
Ah.
coming from your from the country where you have already desk office or even not?
I'm sorry, maybe I didn't get the question.
Are you setting your desk in the countries where the investments are coming
Yes,
from?
yes, where we hope to have investment flows.
You hope to, but
Yeah.
are there already in Italy investors from those countries?
Some of them, yes. Some of them, yes. Some of them, yes. Yes.
I can tell in this regarding this that the desks were chosen considering the most important investors in Italy. So we choose New York, US, New York, and San Francisco, and London, Istanbul, Dubai.
Okay, and the
India.
biggest amount of foreign investment are coming for Turkey at the moment. How are statistic data from?
Statistic data mostly are coming from Western countries, so US, UK, and other European countries mostly.
By the way, I've just been informed that the next workshop is going to start. So you can all just stay for the next 4-hour workshop.
Thank you very much, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.